So, of course, the anti-Israel protests are ongoing, expanding, more mass arrests, more videos of people storming into other schools because it is getting bigger. And it's obvious, the more media attention it gets, the more media attention it will get, the more young people learn about it, the more bored people want to do something, and so they join in. And that's why there's that viral video of the young woman saying, I have no idea why we're protesting, because many of them don't. Of course, many of them do, but, many of them don't. It's interesting to see many celebrities now coming out, wholeheartedly calling these protests anti-Semitic, and I just find it absolutely interesting to see where the narrative is going. I have to wonder how much of what we are seeing is related to China subverting woke activists from, racist, anti-racist, whatever they want to call it, DEI stuff into anti-Israel. And the deep state can't control it, so of course they want to get rid of TikTok. We'll talk about that. But I think the bigger story right now has to do with Trump, SCOTUS, his trial today, and of course, Arizona has indicted 18 more individuals, the electors, the alternate slate or fake electors, as Arizona is calling them, as well as Trump's lawyers once again, including Jenna Ellis. Oh boy. When she pleaded guilty and threw Trump under the bus, many people were upset because they donated to her thinking she was going to fight back. But then she went on TV, she cried in court and said, I'm so sorry, had I known what Trump was doing, et cetera, et cetera. Now she's being charged again. It's going to be interesting because she's confessed to doing it. So I wonder how Arizona will handle this. And I certainly think, look, if you are going to throw Trump under the bus and you think that by taking that path, you will save yourself, they have made it patently clear. They will indict you again. They will come after you. And pleading has done nothing for her. She should have fought back. So we'll talk about that, plus much, much more. Before we get started, my friends, head over to castbrew.com and buy coffee. Appalachian Nights is everybody's favorite, but Rise with Roberto Jr., of course, is a close second. And then we have Stand Your Grounds. When you buy Cast Brew coffee, you are supporting the show and you're helping our endeavor to build physical locations all across the country. We currently have a physical location in Martinsburg, West Virginia that is under construction. Hopefully will be open soon, but we do have multiple spaces, floors there. And we're going to be doing live shows once a month. We did one already last month. We're still working on getting everything set up. So when you become a member, if you become a member over at timcast.com, you will get periodic emails when we announce that we will be having live shows that you can attend. It is a private members only function, not open to the public, so you have to be a member. But as a member at timcast.com, you'll get access to our Discord server, which is a chat room where you can hang out with like-minded individuals, and they have pre-shows, after shows, a lot of great content, and a lot of great people. Networking is really important in winning a culture war, so make sure you get involved. But your membership supports us as we are being actively censored. YouTube has taken down two of our most popular, quite literally our two biggest episodes on YouTube. They were deleted, and they're going after a lot more people. And I have to say, with the banning of TikTok, I really wonder what this is all about and how they're going to start handling the algorithm. And I mean the intelligence agencies and their collusion with big tech, considering there's a mass wave of anti-Israel protests. Things are about to get really interesting. So support our work over at timcast.com. And at this physical location in Martinsburg, we're actually going to have a members-only club where you can hang out, play video games, watch TV, play pool, all that cool stuff. And that's for the elite members at $100 a month. Not open yet, but just so you know, smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, share the show with your friends. Joining us tonight to talk about this and much, much more is the Lectern guy.
Hey, Tim. Thanks for having me on.
Is that your name now?
I'm getting used to it. I kind of like it.
What's your real name and who are you?
My real name is Adam Johnson. I'm a guy you might have recognized me from Terrorist film, January 6th. Been promoted a lot. I am the former Speaker of the House. I am a husband, father of 5 kids who are watching. I said I would say hi. Hi, guys.
Does the law enforcement get mad that you say things like that?
I don't care.
But those are the rules, right? If you physically stand in a building, just like in the 1600s, it makes you you get the title.
According to some people, I was actually king of the world.
Oh, wow.
Scott Adams said this, that he who holds the lectern holds the power.
And Jacob Chansley, was he the president of the Senate?
I think so. I think that's how that works.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're famously or infamously the guy who was carrying the lectern. And we've had you on several times before, so thanks for hanging out. Should be fun.
Yeah, it's going to be a good time.
Seamus is back.
I'm Seamus Coughlin. I make cartoons. You may have seen them at a YouTube channel called Freedom Tunes. If not, please go over there, check them out. We just released a cartoon today about the absurdity of trans children and the fact that these people are grooming innocent kids into this stuff. It's a video I think you guys will enjoy, and we also released a really funny video last week. We'll release a really funny video next week, every single Thursday.
He hopes it'll be funny.
I hope it'll be funny. You guys will decide if it's funny or not.
You guys should go and judge.
Just check it out. Go there and judge me. If you don't think it's funny, leave a comment. It is the worst video I have ever seen, and I hate you.
Seamus is the youngest child, so he really needs you to put the hate comments
exactly.
on.
I need the attention. And if you like what I'm doing, go to freedomtunes.com, become a member. You'll get one of the many behind-the-scenes videos we have and cartoons up there that only people who are supporting the show financially are able to see, and you'll also get to watch the podcast that I create, or listen to the podcast that I create with the other crew members who I make the cartoon with.
That's awesome. Well,
thank you.
I'm Hannah Claire Brimlow. I'm a writer for SCNR, that's Scanner News. I'm really grateful to be a part of that news team. You should check out all of our work. We've got really amazing writers, including Chris Bertman, Cassandra McDonald, Adrian Norman, Chris Carr. I'm really, really grateful that I get to work with them every single day. Serge is here.
Yes, I am. Ready when you are, Tim.
Yeah, there's also another story. Harvey Weinstein's conviction was overturned.
Yeah.
And apparently he cried when he found out. So this is kind of a funny story, but if we get into it, here we go. Let's just jump into the first story. We have this from Politico. Arizona grand jury indicts Meadows, Giuliani, and other Trump allies for 2020 election interference. The former president is listed as an unindicted co-conspirator, which means I assume they'll probably indict him at some point. So several of the names are actually redacted. And according to Politico, based on how they describe the individuals, it's fairly obvious who these people actually are. They say the only defendants whose names are visible in the version of the indictment released by the Arizona AG are the 11 Republicans who falsely posed as the state's presidential electors despite Joe Biden's narrow victory there. Among them, former Arizona GOP chairman Kelly Ward, state senators Jake Hoffman, Anthony Kern, Arizona's RNC committeeman Tyler Bauer. Arizona Attorney General Chris Mays, a Democrat, has been helming the aggressive investigation, though she initially appeared to be focused primarily on the false electors. In recent months became clear the scope of the probe was broader than previously understood and swept up prominent Trump allies at the national level. They go on to mention the names of the 7 defendants, including Meadows, Giuliani, and Epstein, are redacted, but the document makes clear who they are by describing their roles. Others include attorneys John Eastman, Jenna Ellis, and Christina Bobb, as well as Trump 2020 campaign operative Mike Roman. So I just want to point something out, too. As they say, falsely posed. This actually was a large component of the Supreme Court oral arguments today, because Trump's lawyers said that's not correct. They're not falsely posing. There is already precedent in numerous cases, even to the Supreme Court, of states sending alternate electors. There's even a video going viral of Van Jones mentioning that in 1876 there were many states that had alternate slates of electors, and famously, between Richard Nixon and JFK, Hawaii sent uncertified electors, which Nixon chose to count. So I suppose they're wanting to have their cake and eat it too. The important thing to understand is Politico, when they write this is the trick. This is how they manipulate you, framing it as though it is a foregone conclusion that falsely posing as an elector, they're asserting something is. The assumption is it was already a crime and illegal what they did. Now let's figure out if they did it, instead of arguing whether or not you are allowed to send alternate electors. Or the reality is, I don't think they even necessarily sent. I think they had a group of people who said they were prepared to be the sworn electors for Trump in the event of a court victory, which is what you have to do to challenge an election. And now they're being criminally charged for it because, my friends, the Rubicon has been crossed by the Democrats some time ago. Donald Trump's court case in New York, need I say it again? It's a misdemeanor that's beyond the statute of limitations. They've upgraded to a felony that they're arguing is election interference, but not a single person can say what the crime was, because their argument is the crime is that there was a conspiracy between Trump, Michael Cohen, and what was his name? David Pecker, is that his name?
Yes.
They said they conspired to suppress negative information to influence the election, which of course is completely legal and not a conspiracy because it is completely legal. I don't know what to tell you when we're at a point where you have basically the entire state of New York pretending to file criminal charges. I'll just stress this. Trump being threatened and forced to attend this trial is no different than a group of clowns putting on clown costumes and saying it's time to go to clown jail. There's no statutory law and there's no legal authority they have to demand this of Trump. There is no criminal statute for which Trump is actually being charged. I honestly have no idea what's going on. And to make it worse, Trump didn't go to the Supreme Court oral arguments. He went to New York and complained about it. I'm disappointed, but I get it. The argument, they say, is that Trump didn't want it to appear that he was making the Supreme Court case about him. He wanted it to be separate from him so that it would be about the country. And I get it. I can respect that. Because we were saying the other day, I was like, Trump should be there and he should say, I'm going to stand up here. I'm going to stand here to defend the office of the presidency. The concern from his legal team, I suppose, was if Trump does go there, it becomes a question about Trump's actions and not a question about the office of the presidency. So he wanted it to be essentially standalone. But here we are. I want to add this before I just kick it off. Jenna Ellis really offended people when she said she was going to fight these charges in Georgia, raised a ton of money, and then pleaded guilty, cried in court and on TV and said, if only she had known, she regrets it. She didn't know what was going on. Well, there's one thing about confessing to doing something and pleading guilty to on TV is that now with Arizona charging her, that's it. Not only will she likely raise not a single cent, maybe 1 penny, maybe she'll have some friends who will give her money, but she's burned her goodwill. She burned the bridges with Trump and his base, and now she's being actively targeted still by the Democrats, and they will likely only turn the heat up. Only now she has nothing to offer them. So I imagine she goes to prison. I don't see a path out for her. Pleading guilty does nothing for her. She already pleaded guilty in Arizona. In Georgia. They got that. She's not going to raise money from anybody else. What's she going to do? Go to Arizona and be like, well, I went on TV and said, yeah, I did it. I didn't. Good luck.
The victories they go after for these people who support Trump, especially with J6ers, is they want you to bend the knee and say, Trump put me here, this is my fault. I know when the proffers that I went to, 12, 13 hours worth, that was the goal the entire time. With Jenna Ellis, she bent the knee. She said the words, but now she's all used up. She played the game thinking she was going to get out of it. They're not going to stop. If you are affiliated with Trump, they will continue to come after you again and again. They're not actually going against, these aren't charges, right? This is not real.
Yeah.
The charge is, you supported Trump and you went against us.
She's a lawyer. What did she do? She was asked by a U.S. citizen to represent him by doing legal services, and she did. And that's not a crime. And they charged her for it.
Kenneth Chesborough, who also pled guilty in Georgia, is one of the, I think he's co-conspirator number 5 or something.
Unindicted though, right?
Unindicted. And so it's this thing, they're like, he pled guilty, he is still being implicated in something. I don't know, I can't speak to the motivations of why you would plead guilty in any of these cases. I could understand that there's a lot of financial and social pressure to do that. On the other hand, it doesn't protect you from anything else. And especially with the fervor with which they're approaching, they being a larger left-wing movement in the country to convict Trump. I mean, this came out the day that we had Supreme Court arguments, and I know we might talk about that later, but it's anything to try and make Trump look bad because inevitably he's going to be the Republican nominee, and there is hysteria about preventing him from getting in the White House. I mean, it's the same field of people that are running these polls that are saying, well, RFK is taking votes away from Trump, when actually they're also praising RFK's entire family for being like, he should drop out of the race, he's making it more difficult. They just want anything to keep Trump out, and all of this feels like a waste of taxpayer dollars to me, to be honest. I can't imagine being in any of these states, especially if you live in a city that has a serious crime problem, being like, thanks, guys, this is what you're investigating?
Yeah,
I don't think they have any concern wasting taxpayer dollars.
No, they
hold on
don't,
a
but the
second.
taxpayers probably do.
Well, I think we're missing something, right? If we want to argue, and I think there's at least some room for this form of analysis, that the purpose of a system is what it does. This is not a waste of taxpayer money. This is actually the kind of stuff that they take your money to do, to continue to empower themselves. They're scared. They know that if Trump gets reelected, they're going to be punished for trying to use the system against the people and subverting their will, even though they claim we live in a democracy, even though they claim that needs to be respected, even though they claim they want free and fair elections. They went after the democratically elected president. They did not let an authentic transfer of power take place, because the entire time he was in office, they were running investigations, pulling all sorts of shenanigans to try to bring him down, impeach him, bring him out of office. And despite all of the investigation and the amount of time that they spent looking into him, which we know at least goes back to the time when he was running for office, because the Obama administration was spying on him, and that did turn out to be true, no matter how much the media wanted to mock him for it. And after all of that, after the degree to which every single every single inch of this man's entire life has been combed over. They have to bring him up on these nonsense charges. They have to bring him up on these nonsense charges, and we all know why. We all know why. It's because the only law that he broke is the implicit law. Don't challenge the deep state. It's not a law that's formalized or written down or codified, but when we see the way they're handling Trump and the people he surrounded himself with, it is very clear that it's one of the highest rules in this country.
You know what I love? It's that back in like the 2016 cycle, the deep state guys got together and they were like, Trump's forced our hand. Release the tape of him saying, grab him by the pussy. He's done. And then they release it and nothing happens. And they're like, what's going on? Why isn't he losing? And it's like, sir, he's become more popular. It's like, So they have to keep ramping it up. They've come to the point now where everything that they thought would actually stop him didn't. So they're just making things up now. And they're like, he had a marketing team that wanted to make him look good in the press. So he cheated. Arrest him, I guess.
That crazy
He
guy.
ran a campaign. Isn't it incredible that he ran a campaign? That he tried to make deals with journalistic outlets to publish stories.
Wait. Here's the best part. David Pecker testified that Trump actually wasn't even involved in that.
Yeah.
It was him and Michael Cohen working together, and Trump was unaware. And that when Michael Cohen brought up payment to him, Trump had no idea what he was talking about.
Which has like been Trump's legal team's position the whole time, but also because no Democratic politician has ever had this sort of catch and kill agreement with a publication. There's no way a left-leaning politician has ever gone to, I don't know, the left-leaning mainstream media and been like, hey, don't run bad stories about me. That would never happen, right? Oh, wait, it probably happens all the time. It's just that Trump's not allowed to do it.
Well, look, I keep bringing this up, but Time Magazine literally acknowledged that the media and all of corporate America came together, they coalesced, and they decided that they were going to prevent Donald Trump from getting elected. But they said that they were fortifying the election rather than stealing it. And so they were comfortable admitting that publicly. But we all know what they're saying actually means. Even if you don't want to take the interpretation I take, it's really, really obvious that what they did was much larger than anything they're accusing Trump of doing here, right? His lawyer talking to a publisher saying he'll make a deal with him to not publish certain stories doesn't even begin to approach the territory of what they did and that they acknowledge that they did when all of the large media outlets and social media outlets and even intelligence officials came together to kill a story because it made Joe Biden look bad.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, Republicans don't do anything.
That's right.
Well, there is something they do. Mike Johnson goes to Colombia and threatens to pull federal funding and demands that Joe Biden bring in the National Guard because a bunch of people are protesting Israel. Well, that's one thing they're upset about, I guess.
I would love to send the National Guard to the border, though. That would be cool.
Isn't that funny?
Yeah, send the National Guard and get in the wrong directions.
Dude, look, I got to tell you, it's very obvious
Let us send the protesters to the border. They'll establish an encampment, and then maybe we'll do something about it.
When they ousted McCarthy and no one could figure out who was going to be speaker, and then it was Mike Johnson, everyone's like, who's this guy? And then the deep state said, Mr. Johnson, Mr. Speaker, congratulations. Right this way, we're going to give you the confidential briefing. And then they brought him into a room, closed the door popped right back open. He walked out and said, I've completely changed all of my positions. Wow. And now he's in favor of FISA warrants. He's in favor of foreign spending. He's in favor of Ukraine, Israel, all these things. It's almost like they brought him to a back room, beat him up a little bit, and then kicked him out and said, you know what happens next?
No, I think it was the battle of ideas. I think they had a really spirited conversation about it.
And they shook hands at the end. They said, see you later, man.
He went, I agree with that after the conversation was over.
You make some great points. No, I mean, there are a lot of Republicans who are in Congress right now who do support sending money overseas. I think we forget because there are a vocal faction of Republicans who say like, hey, let's put America first. Let's focus here. But, you know, you saw Tom Tillis from North Carolina, the senator from North Carolina, attack Marjorie Taylor Greene this week, saying that she's like terrible leader and all this stuff. Meanwhile, he's like, it's absolutely imperative that we send money to Ukraine. Like, do you actually think she's bad, or are you just mad that she's against sending money abroad? What is it here? And again, are you a Republican that reflects my values, or are you just a Republican who has a completely different worldview? Are we only on, do you only have the same label as Marjorie Taylor Greene, sort of ceremonially.
Well, no, I think at this point it's clear that it's just a ceremonious label. There's a massive civil war, and I would say in both parties. I alluded to this last night when talking about the Israel-Palestine issue. I think that's much more of an establishment, anti-establishment question than it is a Republican or Democrat question, right or left. And we're seeing that increasingly. I think that's also the case with the COVID lockdowns. I think that's been the case with certain conversations surrounding vaccines, certain conversations with other things that people in the mainstream have considered to be conspiracy theory, right? So MTG might, be a Republican, and so might some of these other people, but in reality, they have absolutely nothing in common. I mean, they really have nothing in common.
I just want to add real quick, just this side note, because someone super chatted saying she wasn't found guilty. Jenna Ellis becomes latest Trump lawyer to plead guilty over efforts to overturn Georgia's election. So that happened. And someone said
you plead guilty.
She wasn't even found guilty. She just said, "I'm guilty."
Right. And so
worse.
this is the issue. Some people are saying, but it was a deferment, like something else. Who cares? She got what, 5 years of probation or something? Is that what she got?
And probably, I think it's something like that. She agreed to cooperate.
Tearfully to the judge. She's a forced defendant case. Racketeering, violation of the public, both felonies. I think she got sentenced to probation or something like that. But that's not my point. My point is, she has now confessed. She has publicly confessed to having done whatever they accused her of doing. And at the time when this happened, what we were saying, that's all they wanted. They don't care if she goes to jail. She's a nobody. They want her to say, yes, Trump did it. I'm so sorry. So they can pin it on Trump. But now, hilariously, after she has publicly admitted she did everything they claimed, Arizona's going after her for the same thing. And what's she going to do now? Say, no, what? I already did everything you wanted me to do. Dude, it's like in the movies when the guy gets involved with the mob one time and he takes a loan out and then they're like, we own you forever now. Like no matter what you do, you can never pay him back. It's always you're owned. That's it. She went to the deep state and said, okay, you win. I'll give you everything. It's almost like, if you're walking down the street and you look like an easy target, the guy who's going to rob somebody, he's not going to go for the guy who looks angry and ready to fight. He's going to go for the person who looks scared and just gives in.
Yeah, that's
now,
right.
I'm not giving advice on anyone what you do in these kind of situations, but she immediately got on her knee and said, I will do anything you say. And they say, we own you forever now.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, they're not looking for justice. They're trying to make examples out of people. You don't make an example out of somebody by letting them go.
What concerns me about that story, we talk about the deep state being involved, the elections and everything, Time Magazine's articles. All of these things are true, but I think they've always been true. I think there's always been interference, intelligence agencies in our elections. What concerns about that story is we're going after attorneys now, attorneys who represent people who are against the state, right? That's what concerns me the most. I know my attorneys had death threats. They were calling for their law degree licenses to be revoked. Chris Cuomo had on one of them, and Chris Cuomo said to them, why would you defend this person? I know he has a right to an attorney, but why does he deserve you? You're a good attorney. Like the impression is that people shouldn't be defended by good attorneys.
Yep. Only the bad ones.
Yes.
Well, let's jump to this next case. The other big news today was the Supreme Court hearing. And the funny thing is, I think Trump won outright, just like instantly. And it was kind of weird. I think it was Ketanji Brown Jackson who outright said presidents fear criminal prosecution after impeachment. And then Trump's lawyer was like, I agree.
He's like, true.
That was the whole point of this. Thank you. And so it just felt totally fake. In fact, there was one question. I don't remember who it was. I think it was Kavanaugh. He said something like, it might have been Kagan. I don't know. Someone asked, one of the justices, aren't there already things that Congress, aren't there already actions the president could take or things related to the executive office that Congress cannot regulate? And the government's lawyers were like, yes.
Yeah.
Like, okay, isn't that immunity? Like, you cannot tell a president he can't do these things. Like, he is immune from Congress passing laws about what he can or can't do. That's already there. So it seems like this is just a waste of time. And I think the issue at hand was actually, may have been Kavanaugh saying that, I'll paraphrase, the lower court is a bunch of morons. They need to actually ask the question of whether Trump's actions were part of his official duties or not. Of course, immunity exists for presidential actions. The question is, what qualifies as a presidential action? And this is where things get really crazy. The fact that this has never been answered before in the couple hundred years of American history, it's kind of nuts. So you get this ridiculous question from, I think it was Sotomayor, saying, what if the president ordered the assassination of his political rival? Is that an official action? And what the Trump's lawyer said is, well, it's a hypothetical. I don't know, but it sounds like it is. Yes. And they're shocked, like, oh, that's an official action and he's immune from it. Yes, but it's also considered a high crime for which you would be impeached for. I don't think the liberal justices actually understand law or the arguments being presented or what official means. So when Trump's lawyers are like, he is immune, a president is immune from prosecution based on their official duties, they think the word official means good. Whereas what he's saying is any duties that are related to the politics of the office. So if Trump goes golfing while he's president and beats a child to death with the golf club, that has nothing to do with being president. But if as president, you get intelligence saying that an American citizen is about to do something like commit a murder or something, you sign off on that person being apprehended even with lethal force. Is that murder? So the question then becomes, if the president orders the assassination of his political rival, well, the question is, are you suggesting that with no intelligence and no legal basis, he just says, go kill a guy? Because that's not an official duty. It could be construed as such, and this is where things get crazy. And this is actually Trump's argument, and this is why I think it's insane. This has never been answered. If a president orders the killing of an American citizen, like Barack Obama killed Abdurrahman al-Awlaki and Anwar al-Awlaki, and so let me just pause real quick. Barack Obama ordered a drone strike on a civilian restaurant in a country we are not at war with, Yemen, that killed an American citizen named Abdul Rahman al-Awlaki. He was 16 years old. He was not a criminal. He did nothing wrong, and Obama ordered the strike that killed him. Anyway, we don't know why he did. And he's not been prosecuted for a murder. And this is the question at play. Do I think Barack Obama should be criminally prosecuted? Yes, but after he's impeached, and you can be impeached afterwards. Obama's not president anymore. They should, in Congress, open an investigation and figure out why they did this. Under what authority did they bomb a civilian restaurant? But think about what this means. It means that Barack Obama could order Seamus to be killed on Fifth Avenue.
Don't give him ideas.
And you could not criminally prosecute him because the argument is it is of the executive branch to enforce law and up to and including the armed forces, which includes lethal force. So when the Supreme Court justice says, what if you ordered the assassination of someone? It's like the president orders people assassinated all the time, and we're not locking him up for it. I think you have to either accept that or, as Trump stated when he was leaving the court, their argument would leave the presidency as a ceremonial role with no power.
Obama's drone strike specifically came up today, which I thought was interesting. And Sonia Sotomayor was like, well, but if the president's doing it because they're protecting us from terrorists, that's okay, right? Like one of the things that they had to keep coming back to was basically the liberal justices. I think it's pretty clear that they believe no matter what Trump does, it is malintentioned, right?
Yes.
Whether he's president or civilian or whatever, there is a belief that some people act honorably, and we can put Obama on that list, but we cannot put Trump on the list. That was definitely the impression I was getting, especially from the level of sort of hostility that Ketanji Brown Jackson gave today. She at one point implied that if presidents have immunity, she didn't even imply it. She said the White House would become the center of criminality in America. You know, there's this idea that like, right. And the other guy was like, well, the assumption for the last 200 years is that it hasn't become that. So I don't know what you're saying. But it is really interesting. And Justice Neil Gorsuch was the one who said, you know, this is actually law that we're making for the country. Like this is for history, because the state often wants to point directly to things Trump did, but the concept of presidential immunity is what the court is ruling on. And so I find it really interesting. And it was over 3 hours of debate, and Trump's attorneys opted not to offer a rebuttal, which I also found interesting. I don't know if that'll hurt them later, but there's a chance that they felt like by the time they had presented the argument, the state had been really thoroughly refuted by all of the conservative justices on the court, that it was sort of like, you guys don't really understand what the balance of presidential immunity is.
It's insane that this is even happening because the idea, in my opinion, is so patently obvious the president is immune from criminal prosecution for his official duties. To stress, if for no reason Obama, Trump, Biden, anybody went on to Fifth Avenue and just killed a guy, you'd be like, okay, that was a high crime. There would still have to be, I would imagine, an impeachment and criminal prosecution. But the challenge and the interesting thing about this argument that I didn't consider initially is what an official duty of the president is actually fairly broad and has to be protected even when it comes to killing people. And that's crazy. That being said, again, if any of the presidents walked on a Fifth Avenue with a gun, just shot a guy, they'd probably just criminally prosecute him. I don't think there's a scenario. He'd be impeached. He'd be convicted right away.
Right.
There'd be an investigation. But the question is, ordering the assassination of someone, like the justices argued, they then argued, what if the president instructs the military to stage a coup? Trump's lawyers are like, well, it's a hypothetical, but it sounds like an official act. Yes. And they're like, staging a coup? What these people don't understand, because they're midwits or worse, there is no circumstance ever where a sitting president will stand up in front of the world and go, I hereby order a military coup to seize power and take over this country. Never going to happen. What will happen is a president will say, an armed group of terrorists have stormed into a building, so I'm hereby instructing the National Guard to quell the rebellion, and there will be some official justification behind it. And then, in the inverse, what happens if, let's say, you've got President A, a former president, and President B, a current president. They're in an election, and the former president has a bunch of former military guys storm into a building and take it over. And then the sitting president says, I'm instructing the military to go and take him out. But it turns out the former president won the election. Is that a coup? Or is it two warring factions who think they're legally right? The issue is, it actually is quite crazy. The president does enjoy broad immunities. He has to. Otherwise, there is no commander in chief. You would never order a law enforcement action again, ever. You'd be a co-conspirator to all the murders committed by these people. Joe Biden would be indicted right now for child sex trafficking because of what the CBP is doing. So certainly we can go after CBP for, as we get down the line. But look, my attitude here is, all right, baby. Yeah, Supreme Court wants to open the door. We arrest Obama.
Well, here's the thing. I think you and I both know that this would be selectively applied.
Sure.
If this were to ever happen. They would never use it against Obama. They would use it against Trump. They wouldn't use it against Biden. They'd use it against whatever Republican gets elected next.
And Republicans will never do anything.
That's right. That's absolutely right.
One of the things that came up was if you have to understand the personal political motivation, any president could be doing something to get reelected, right? So all of their actions could be taken as actually self-serving or nefarious in some way. And the thing is, it can't be something that retroactively, after the person leaves office, we go back and say, like, actually, you have to be convicted of this thing because whatever. Like, the reason that the impeachment process is important is because it sets a standard that the president has done something wrong, has failed, it's some version, it failed their oath of office in some way, and that another branch of government has said you're gone. They would go back to this. The justices, when discussing it today, would come back to this idea that, like, well, other people have high pressure jobs and they have to abide by the law, and it's like, being the CEO of a high-powered company isn't the same thing as the presidency at all. And also, yes, the president still has to abide by the law. There is still checks and balances on his power. He's not just allowed to do whatever he wants all the time forever. But there definitely always seemed to be in the court today this idea of, like, what is the motivation behind it? And again, it was hard not to feel, especially with some of the more left-leaning justices, that it was as if they said no matter what Trump is doing, his motivations are always bad.
What concerns me is the precedence of this, because the amount of confidence they're going after these people and bending the law and prosecuting people the way they want to, and just we're sitting here like, well, they'll never do the other guy. They're confident they're never giving up power again.
Yeah.
That's where they are. They're like, yeah, we'll set the precedence because it'll never be used against us.
I think you're exactly right. Well, I think they also, it's a mixture. I think they're certainly hoping that they'll never have to give up power again, but part of why they're so afraid and part of why they're pulling out all the stops and really showing their hand here is because they know they actually have the opportunity for that to be the case, and it's going to require Trump not being reelected.
It's all or nothing.
Exactly. And so they know how important this election cycle is.
They're behind the scenes. They're behind the scenes saying, look, you've got one guy and intelligence guy saying, if we implement these policies, they could be used against us. And he says, if we don't implement these policies, they will be used against us.
That's right.
Their only chance now is to throw everything at the wall and make sure Trump can't win.
Yep. Yeah, they're terrified. They're terrified. That's why they're doing this. Like, people don't even understand. They are as scared or more afraid than us. People don't do things like this. People don't really go on the offensive unless they're afraid of what's going to happen to them.
Yeah.
So, like, they're scared too. And there's hope in that.
Well, take a look at Russia. Why does Russia invade Ukraine?
Because they're afraid. Yeah.
They were losing. They lost the soft power battle. The West was taking control of Ukraine, so Russia says force was their only option.
Yeah, and I mean, look, all the existential threats that have come to Russia in the last 100 years, have been from America and Germany. And then you have NATO, which is basically America and Germany. So I was like, yeah, of course, Russia is pretty afraid of losing Ukraine to NATO. I'm not saying that makes Putin justified, but I'm saying it does mean that he acted out of fear. The deep state is acting out of fear. We got to keep calm heads here.
Yeah.
But we have to know what the stakes are. We can't be naive. We can't pretend that everything's going to be okay and we don't have to do anything.
Yeah,
right?
you can't become complacent. You have
Exactly.
to stay active. I mean, I think one of the realities of choosing Biden to be the Democratic nominee is that it set them up for a very weak future. I don't really think that he had the popularity to be a two-term president, and obviously there are questions about his health. But it also encouraged, again, I would say a progressive activist base in the country to use lawfare as warfare and to specifically use any sort of judicial office as a way to go after their enemies. We're seeing this. I mean, New York is probably the biggest offender. You can talk about this with stuff they've done to Project Veritas. You can talk about what they're doing to Trump. There are so many organizations that are suffering at the hands of like Letitia James, Al Bragg. But it's also, I mean, you're the perfect person to talk about this. It's something that they did to people who went to January 6th, right? They overcharged, they over-investigated, they treated them like criminals before they were even fairly given a trial. Everyone was tried in D.C. where they were unlikely, realistically, to be able to face a jury of their peers. I mean, it is not something that can be unwound. We've had 4 years building towards this, and no matter who the next president is, I mean, if it's a Biden, it'll get worse, and if it's Trump, having to dial back sort of activist judicial DAs, it's going to be a really difficult challenge.
Absolutely. Are you aware? So my initial charge is a felony theft for moving furniture. Never actually took it out of the building. It was sitting somewhere. I moved it 20 yards, put it in the center, took a photo, left. That's my story. It's actually very boring. I was given an ankle monitor. I couldn't leave. I had curfew, had to be in the house. Horrible things, right? Well, the prosecutor who did that, do you know about my prosecutor? This is fun.
Oh, yeah,
This is fun.
Is he in jail now?
No, he's out. No ankle monitor,
wow.
no restrictions.
Did
He's
he kill
out.
a guy?
No, on the Howard Franklin down in Tampa where I live, this man got out of his car. It's on video, but allegedly always, and stabbed another motorist in the chest several times, breaking the
gosh.
window. This was
The
my
guy lived?
prosecutor. Yes, the guy lived.
Wow.
Yeah, went to the hospital. He's okay now. But this guy didn't get any restrictions. No ankle monitor. They didn't call him a threat to his community. I move furniture, ankle monitor, you can't leave, curfew.
Wow.
Well, you did it at the Capitol, and we don't care what happens to average Americans. I mean, that was really what was
Yes,
communicated
that's right.
over and over again with all of the January 6th trials, right? If it happens to our elected elite, maybe we'll be concerned. But if it happens anywhere else, like, I don't know, Summer of Love riots, it doesn't matter. We don't care about that. And again, this was all funded by the taxpayers. They use taxpayer money to then use the government to punish the taxpayers who are still obligated to support that. That's why New York can go after Trump and every other organization endlessly, because the bureaucrats themselves aren't paying for it, right? Everyone who is in New York paying taxes is paying for it. And I have to imagine that this is a terrible system for them.
Yeah.
They have all sorts of issues on a state level. New York has had intense immigration over the last, or especially illegal immigration over the last couple of years, and their tax dollars are going after, January 6th defendants and Donald Trump.
That's exactly right. You look at all of these issues. You look at the Summer of Love, the fact that billions of dollars of damage were caused, the fact that these communities are not going to recover for years and years and years if they ever do recover, the fact that people had their businesses burnt down, and for some people, they ran out of insurance money before they even cleared the rubble and went into debt just to have an empty lot, and that there were almost no prosecutions. It certainly didn't result in an investigation, even though 2/3 of the American people wanted an investigation into those riots, more than wanted a January 6th investigation. But then January 6th happens. And now the politicians feel unsafe. The politicians feel as if their territory has been trespassed upon, even though, as we all know, there was federal involvement and there could have been a lot done to prevent it, which was not done, potentially with intention, though we don't know for sure with respect to why they didn't order extra security when they had word that something might have happened. You look at illegal immigration, the fact that these border towns with almost no resources are being absolutely flooded. You look at working class people being put out of the job. Nothing happens, who cares? But then they go into Martha's Vineyard, and those people are all pushed out of there instantly.
Gone in like 48 hours.
Oh, no, they
completely.
actually got visas now. They got, they're now.
good for them.
Yeah, they all got visas now.
Whoa.
Yeah, that
Well,
came out
wonder
like
why.
last week, I think.
Yeah.
Well, ultimately, we all know the message that's being sent. You can harm and harass everyday American citizens, and you will not be punished by the system. If you do something to stand up for everyday American citizens, you're going to be punished. You're going to be punished.
Seamus, I have to correct you. They did actually investigate some of those BLM people, and they actually they got paid for doing it at the end of it because a grave injustice was done to them.
No, that's absolutely right.
They
I was
did
referring to like an official investigation. So we actually had the January 6th committee.
Mm-hmm.
2/3 of the American people wanted an official committee to investigate the BLM riots. We never got one, but you're correct that some of the people who were investigated, where legal action actually was brought against them, they were released and they said, "Why did we do that to you?"
Good for them.
My bad. Here's a few $1,000.
Yeah.
Let's jump
that's
to this
right.
next
That's
story.
right.
Ladies and gentlemen from the Daily Mail, Emory University protest descends into chaos as Georgia cops spray tear gas, fire rubber bullets, and arrest dozens of students. We are seeing mass arrests. We are seeing people, check this one out. This is a pro-Palestinian protesters storming in FIT in New York, the Fashion Institute. Okay. This is it. They're just taking over. You know what's funny? Is that... Let me just show this video for a second. It really does feel like... I think a lot of people look at this and they don't think much of it. They ignore it. They go on with their daily lives. One day... there will be 2,000 of these students in New York City in, let's say, Zuccotti Park, and they're going to be armed, and they're going to be wearing ridiculous clothing, and they're going to bring former officials up with dunce caps on, and they're going to mercilessly beat them in front of a cheering and screaming crowd. People need to understand that things like the Culture Revolution happen just with critical mass. That's it. There doesn't need to be a great awakening of the public. It doesn't need to be that half the country decides they're communist. It needs to be only that like 0.1% does, and they go out and they start attacking people and taking over. What we're seeing now, these protesters, I will say this, because certainly I think people are allowed to protest Israel, but I don't believe these people at large are actually protesting Israel. I think these are just, I think what we have here for the most part, while there certainly are people protesting Israel, I believe it's mostly communist leftists who are joining in protest for the purpose of seizing territory, sowing discord, and trying to enact some kind of communist takeover or destruction of our institutions. And the example that I give you is one, having actually had experience with Occupy Wall Street. One of my favorite moments was when there were protests for Trayvon Martin, organized by some young college students, and they were leading the march. And they were like, we're going to go to One Police Plaza and protest police brutality. Several Occupy Wall Street activists ran to the front of the crowd and shifted the crowd away from the police station to Wall Street so they could jump on the bull and protest Wall Street. Because the crowd marched in the direction people told them to go.
Yeah.
It's the same thing we're seeing here. These people, that's why there's that viral video of the young girl being like, I actually don't know what we're protesting.
Yep.
No, you're absolutely right. You mentioned it doesn't have to be a large percentage of the population, just 0.1% or whatever. And that's absolutely right. I mean, or even 0.1% can be the people protesting. You just have to get a significant enough percentage of people to decide that they're unhappy with life enough to go out and start yelling in the streets. And then the most organized group within that faction always ends up taking over.
I think what you have here quite a bit is there's an element of the right now that has gone very, very anti-Israel. Mm-hmm. And so the left is now seeing an opportunity, an attack vector where they would face limited criticism. You look at the Daily Wire, and I don't know exactly what Ben Shapiro said about it. Some people have accused him, someone super chatted us saying, Ben said if you're an isolationist and you don't America first and don't support Israel, you're anti-Semitic. It doesn't sound like something Ben would say, but it kind of could be something, maybe it's misconstrued, I don't know. But we know that the Daily Wire is of course, for obvious reasons, very pro-Israel. But you have on the right now, many people who are critical of wokeness, critical of DEI, and a lot of them are posting like hardcore anti-Israel content. So these leftists are now thinking, look, if we take this issue and we go and protest, we will have limited pushback from the right on this one. And I think they're right. I think there's like half of the right that is critical of Israel, doesn't want to be involved with Israel, and is not going to push back. In fact, when Greg Abbott said he was arresting these people for anti-Semitism, many people on the right were just like, that's hate speech. Are you nuts? Let him protest.
Myself
when
included.
I was driving in tonight, I was listening to NPR, and they were talking about how cultural Marxism is actually rooted in anti-Semitism because it's against like the Jewish academics that came up with the concepts behind it. Like the idea that this is the label that they're going to pin to sort of turn the tides is very strange to me. And I think ultimately with these students, some of them really strongly believe these things on either side. They're very pro-Palestine or whatever. Like, they're affected by, fears of anti-Semitism. But my concern is that as we go into the summer, as these schools lets out, it could make them die off because the students have to scatter, or it could make the epicenters. You're starting to see these maps pop up. Like Vanderbilt has an encampment. I think it's University of Minnesota has an encampment where all the other students in the area are like, this is what I'm going to do this summer. And the encampments become more serious. I mean, we're at this point where it could sort of go either way, but we know that this movement is spreading throughout the country.
So this is the Wikipedia entry for cultural Marxism. It says cultural Marxism conspiracy theory. That's funny. And it says it's a far-right anti-Semitic conspiracy theory that misrepresents the Frankfurt School as being responsible for modern progressive movements, identity politics, and political correctness. The conspiracy theory posits that there is an ongoing and intentional academic and intellectual effort to subvert Western society via a planned culture war that undermines supposed Christian values of traditionalist conservatism and seeks to replace them with culturally liberal values. I actually agree that's a conspiracy theory because I don't think that the woke left really do want to replace conservatism with woke liberal values or anything like that. I think they're literally just burning things down. So
the emergence of the right doing these, this anti-Semitism and everything, I think it's actually very simple. I think that there are a handful of people that are pushing that narrative. But what I think is that we've been giving Israel money for a very long time, and it's never been an issue. People are struggling to eat. People are struggling to pay their mortgages, and they want someone to blame. I think a lot of it is very simple. So a lot of these people who are now speaking up, I got to blame Ukraine, and Ukraine won't stop, and now we're sending money to Israel. I think it's actually a lot more simple than that.
They apparently now have another page called Marxist Cultural Analysis.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is literally cultural Marxism, but you can't call it that anymore because that would be anti-Semitic.
Exactly. It's literally the exact same
But
thing.
it's the co-opting of language, right?
Well, and you mentioned this, Tim. You just think they're burning it down. I agree. I think those are the same thing. The idea that you'd call it like a conspiracy theory that academics in the American education system want to get rid of Christianity and replace it with liberal cultural values. Like, They
That
say
helps us.
that's what they want. They say that that's what they want. What are you talking about?
That's anti-Semitic, though.
Yeah, that's anti-Semitic, I guess. Oh well.
For some
Greg
reason-
Abbott's gonna have to throw me in prison.
But yeah, right. For some reason, being critical of postmodernism and the Frankfurt School means you don't like Jewish people.
Yeah.
So, like, what does that make Ben Shapiro?
Again, this was like the
Self-hating.
listening to
That's
NPR.
right.
Like, if you're a random person driving your car, you're like, I want to be informed. I'm going to try and listen to it. You probably listen to NPR, and so you're hearing like, oh, cultural Marxism is actually anti-Semitic because it's a criticism of the Jewish academics who created it, or like whatever these two people who are discussing it are saying. Like, it makes it easy to learn that there are certain words that you are supposed to avoid. And I think it does misrepresent sort of people who use the term cultural Marxism to describe what's going on in this country who are not anti-Semitic at all. Like, it's a very strange thing. But again, it's an intentional move, I think, by progressive media outlets to shut down conversation and say, we're going to keep you on track by limiting the words you're allowed to use.
Well, exactly. And so phrases like anti-Semitic, racist, sexist, misogynist, at bottom, what these phrases mean are you're mean. And so when you say something that people in power don't like, for example, you point out that cultural Marxism is a reality, that all of our conventions and values have been subject to deconstruction over the past several decades, and academia has been pushing it. Well, they go, yeah, well, you're mean. You're mean for saying that.
I just want to point this out. Julio Rosas has this tweet. He says, the faculty and student walkout at UT Austin is now underway. A small group of pro-Israel protesters are nearby. So I'm confused. You have a bunch of professors who are critical of Israel, and then you have people who are claiming those professors are pushing, woke policies, racist policies, and that they hate Israel. Yet it's the people critical of the professors who are anti-Semitic when they've said nothing about Jews, and the protesters who and the professors, and I will specifically say the ones who are talking about Israel and not Jewish people. They are not. They like my point here is, it is anti-Semitic. It is hate speech against Jewish people to criticize the professors who are criticizing Israel. I'm just
Yes,
genuinely confused by who's opposed to like what.
It's almost so illogical it's as if it's all made up. It's interfighting.
There was a post from this former Vice reporter where she had like a video of a guy who was, I don't know anything about it, but they were launching like a Unite for Israel protest. Mm-hmm. And she was like, they're cheering on the anti-Semitism because it's a sign of the end times or something. And I'm like, I am so confused. The people who are pro-Israel are Nazi anti-Semites? Okay, I guess. I don't know. I mean, the country is entirely Jewish.
But
there are Christians and Arabs and Muslims who live there.
Exactly. This is what I'm saying. It just means you're mean. That's all it means. And both sides are standing there going, you're mean. And they're going, no, you're mean. That's what it, like when one group calls the other group anti-Semitic or racist or sexist, that's literally just two groups of people saying you're mean. Bring up an argument. Explain your point. No, you're mean is easier. All right, then you're just going to keep doing that.
And then you got the U.S. government being like, we want to occupy all of the Middle East and go to war with Iran. So let's just call everybody racist. And then if they get mad about our foreign policy, we'll call them pro-Putin. And then if they get mad about our Israel foreign policy, we'll call them Jew haters.
Exactly. Like, look,
we
want to totally occupy the Middle East. And if you have anything to say about it, we're going to say that you're the mean one.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think this is the thing, though. They have created a culture where people are really afraid of these labels, and it deludes actual instances where there are problems or there really is true hate or something like that. It makes it so any kind of language is ultimately to shut down typically conservative speech and to make you back off from a position or to ask questions about something that you may genuinely want to know more about or disagree with. And I think using these coercive terms to suppress thought is ultimately one of the reasons that left college professors and left students are walking out, and all the parents and donors are like, but why? We didn't understand that this is what you believed.
Well, I learned something important with the protests that we're seeing with Mike Johnson threatening to pull funding, Mike Johnson saying Biden, you must bring in the National Guard and shut down these protests. I started to better understand. Then they went to ban TikTok, and I thought to myself, wow, I stand to make a lot of money by blindly supporting Israel. So from now on this show, we all are pro-Israel, no matter what Israel does, all the time. And we're opposed to these protesters. They all hate Jews and go Israel. And then, I'm going to wait for someone to give me a call and offer me money.
Check on the mail.
There are people who comment, they're like, Tim got the call from Israel or something. I'm like, shut up.
Is that what that red phone is for? It just rings? And
Well, it's not a call from Israel.
Directly to Israel.
It's a direct line to Hollywood.
Oh. Tim's always like, don't unplug this phone. Don't touch it. Now I know why.
He gets really mad when we go near it.
Yeah, we had to install it after the whole Ye thing happened because they were like, Tim, you need to know who they really are. And I was like, oh.
They give you a call after you had Kanye on.
They came in and installed the phone line. But who is they, though?
I think the deep state is effed. I think they're screwed.
If they lose this election.
Well, I think they're screwed no matter what. The young progressives are anti-Israel. Like that is ludicrously bad for the American foreign policy. Even Trump is pro-Israel. And so what do? They pick Trump, but Trump doesn't want to go along with their foreign policy plans. So they're like, you get some support for Israel. Trump absolutely would go that direction, but then he doesn't want war with Ukraine. He's going to try and enact these peace agreements, and then we're not going to get to expand and energy and all that stuff. Then you go with Joe Biden. How long is that going to last pushing Democrats when their voter base is anti-Israel and opposes your foreign policy? They're between a rock and a hard place. They're about to crumble and fall apart. I do think it's kind of funny though that like they're going to ban TikTok over this. They want to pull federal funding from universities. They want to send the National Guard. I'm seeing even celebrity posts. This one's really funny. Like normies posting things like, these protests are anti-Semitic. And I'm like, wow. I can totally understand why there are people who are like, you got the call, and they think that's the case. When you see things like Mike Johnson, when it's like, he won't send troops to the he won't send the National Guard to the southern border. He won't send in, I shouldn't say he, but Republicans don't do anything about the mass riots. Black Lives Matter. In fact, Joe Biden supports all of that woke garbage. And then as soon as a social media app starts allowing anti-Israel content, all of a sudden they spring into action.
Yep.
But I think it's fair to point out the people who think Israel controlled the United States, I think are very silly people. Because I don't know why people live in this world where they think this tiny nation, which has been around for 80 years, controls the United States, which has military bases all over the planet and is starting wars everywhere and spending money on everything. It's very clear that it's just a vassal of the United States that we use to stage war in the Middle East. And so this is American foreign policy to wage war. The United States has been trying to take over Iran. It's part of they have a list of countries they wanted to invade. The U.S. invaded a bunch of them. Iran's not one of them yet. And they have a staging ground for it. There you go.
Just the worst.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how we plan to do that at this point, though. I mean, just with the disasters that we've had in the Middle East over the past 20, I mean, longer than the past 20 years, but you just look at Iraq and Afghanistan specifically, and you go, I have no idea how they could accomplish any foreign policy
You just
goal.
fund both sides and just wait.
I think the deep state's screwed though, because it seems like the only argument they have right now is you're an anti-Semite.
You're mean.
It's like the only counter. Like when I see a celebrity post, these protests are anti-Semitic, I'm like, I mean, come on. Like, I've seen some anti-Semitism. I agree with that, but like these protests are just mindless leftists who are on TikTok. There's like, is the only argument you have for what's going on that people don't like Jews?
Well, also, all right, if one group of people claims that another group of people is oppressing them, does that mean they're racist against the group that they claim is oppressing them? Because if that's true, then all of the BLM riots were entirely racist, no? Because they were claiming that white people were oppressing them.
That is the funny thing about the actual anti-Semitism. It's just like, it's wokeness, but replacing white person with Jewish person. And it's the exact same argument. I call it the Jewish privilege argument. They're like, there are too many people who are Jewish doing this, that, or otherwise, and they have a lot of money. And I'm like, it's like white privilege argument, dude. I don't care. It's meaningless to me. But if the deep state's only argument right now in the press, like if this is what the news organizations are pumping out, it's anti-Semitic, I'm like, is that it? Because that's not going to win an argument with these people who are on TikTok, and banning TikTok ain't going to do it either.
Well, then they'll come up with a new word. I'm serious. They will. Like, they kept calling everyone racist forever, and then when that didn't work against Donald Trump, they started saying white supremacist all the time. All the time.
They're
Did you do
losing.
that? No one was using the phrase white supremacist to refer to their political opponents, or almost nobody, until Trump got elected, right? And so when the anti-Semitic label wears off, they're going to come up with a different term.
I just think I feel like it's kind of over, right? Like, you know, looking at what they're doing with Trump, the Democrats and the intelligence agencies, the criminal charges, these peoples are zombie-eyed. Like that woman from Arizona, I forgot her name, where she's like, I have made the hard decision to indict these people. She looks like she's been living off saltine crackers for the past several weeks. And they're just like, say the line. And she's like, I have no choice but to indict Trump. They've become really, really bad at what they do, you know?
Yeah, I think the more you use terms broadly like this, the less weight that they have, right? So if everything out there it's why I like to use the term hate crime. It's why everything that happens in this room that I don't like, I call it a hate crime, because I think hate crime is sort of a weird, ambiguous term that I think is misused by the justice system. And so I've just decided it's something I'm personally going to hijack. There are words that you could use, like labels you could throw around, and if we adhered to them as being very strict, very specific in use, it would be a meaningful label, and you'd be like, wow, that person did this, serious. But if you just start calling everyone, you know, a bully, or if you start calling everyone a meanie or whatever it is, like, it stops meaning anything. It doesn't bear the
a
weight.
long enough timeline, we're all terrible people. So I guess that makes us all equal then?
Yeah.
Well,
you know,
the idea of a cry bully.
I'm actually fairly optimistic now. Looking at these protests and the failures of the deep state to curtail the expansion of this like deranged ideology and like whatever leftists are trying to do, which seems to be just chaos. I'm thinking like, man, they've totally lost control. The fact that we're having this show at all, they can't control anything anymore. And it really does feel like their power is evaporating. As it evaporates, they become more and more desperate, but the end result is going to be the total disenfranchisement of the deep state, or whatever you want to call it. They're gonna crumble, and then it'll be interesting to see what happens. And then we'll maybe then we'll be able to do shows without being censored.
I think you look at BLM, you look at January 6th, look at this. Remove yourself from the political ideology. Where you align for all three of those things? At the end of it, they are people assembling who have grievances at what's going on in their country. And they have a right to do so. And they should always have a right to do so. We have the right now saying that it's okay that we should take these people and arrest them because they're assembling against something I don't like. And they're going to willingly give up their right to assemble and share ideas. We're selling both sides in this idea. We're telling the left it's fine to get all the J6ers because their ideas are bad. We're telling the right it's okay to get all these Palestinian supporters because all of their ideas are bad. And they're both nodding along in agreement.
Well, it sounds like...
Or referring to some small criminal element within the protest and then saying, because of that, you have to shut all of it down.
Yes.
Now, the difference...
This is
to be
Abbott's
clear,
language, though.
Because we
Anti-Semitism will be arrested. We won't deal with that.
And I just want to mention this to clarify so no one's confused here. This does not apply to the BLM riots because because they were massively violent. Buildings were
Right.
burned down, lives were destroyed. But with this protest, I would say the same thing. If people who aren't breaking the law should not be arrested, right? People who aren't breaking the law should have the freedom to protest and say whatever.
Adam, you say that we're selling this idea on both sides. What happens if you keep selling this idea on both sides that they're both evil, they must be stopped by any means necessary?
Oh, do I get to say it? Civil War.
Oh, is that what you were going to say? Oh, I don't know. I was just curious where you were going with
That's
it.
Tim's slogan. You get out.
Maybe.
I think we sign our rights
gotta
away.
tell you.
I think we sign our rights away. We're happy to do it because at least we're winning.
I think it is all of these beautiful ideas of freedom only exist in a security bubble. Feminism, one of the latest, wokeism, all of these things can exist because we have created security. But I got to tell you, when you're in the wilderness and you're dealing with, like, let's just put it this way. Let's say you, good sir, Adam, you know anything about outdoors survival?
A fair bit.
Fair bit. So you're out you're lost in the woods. You have limited food, water, supplies, ammunition, and a gun. And you're with two fat New York liberals who have no idea and have never been in the woods before. And they're arguing with you about what to do. You won't stand for it. There's no question. You'll say, get out of my way. I'm not, you're a moron. When you're dealing with real survival, it's fall in line. But in reality, I think these people would be like, tell me what to do.
I went straight to they're going to taste terrible.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so, I tell people during Occupy Wall Street, the police would say things like, that's a frozen zone. You can't stand there. And then people would argue that if the anarchists, they would be like, there's no such thing as authority doesn't exist. And I'd be like, that's not true. Authority exists. And then they would make the argument, the police are saying frozen zone. That's not legitimate. And I was like, of course it's not. But if you saw someone bleeding and a doctor was there in doctor clothes with a doctor badge and said, I'm a doctor, you put pressure on the wound, you'd say, yes, sir. That's real authority because you're trying to do right. You're trying to do good.
This was Milgram experiment, right? People will look at someone and say, what the Milgram was,
right,
if doctors came in and they're like, yeah, I'll shock the person because this person authority is telling me to do it.
Well, it's good and it's bad. But my point ultimately is beautiful classical liberalism doesn't exist outside of a security bubble. Same thing as feminism. Same thing as all of these ideas.
Dude, feminism doesn't even exist when the check comes.
Right. So right now we're talking about this idea of you've got these far leftists who are chanting pro-Hamas slogans, who are chanting pro-Hamas. They are chanting from the river to sea and things like that. And worse things too. And we're supposed to say they're allowed to say it. And the argument is that we believe in free speech. So even if it's speech that we find abhorrent, we're not going to arrest them. But sooner or later, you are confronted by overt communists who are actively burning cities down, subverting your laws, taking over your institutions, and you are actually facing a real threat to life, liberty, and you have to ask yourself whether or not liberalism can exist in a conflict. So if you are in a civil war, and there is let's say you have conflicted territories, and someone comes into your territory preaching, telling everyone to take up arms to defend the other side. Let's say there's blue and red. No, let's say green and yellow, because we don't want to make this sound like politics. There's green and yellow. They each have 50 yards of a football field. And you're on the green side. And you're saying we believe in family, traditional values. And one of the guys starts screaming, everyone now, take up your arms and fight for yellow instead. It wouldn't be tolerated. You'd be like, those people are actively trying to kill us, and you are supporting them and trying to get our people to go join them. We're shutting you down. No questions asked because it's a life or death situation. The problem is liberalism exists when there's no conflict. And this is what we saw with the Civil War. When Abraham Lincoln decided that he was going to have the Maryland legislature arrested, and he did, he was going to create a corridor from D.C. up to Pennsylvania, I think to Philadelphia, where he suspended habeas corpus and started arresting people. One guy got arrested for no reason, just because they were like, we don't know, we don't care, we're at war, and we're locking you up because it's an existential crisis. We can sit here and talk about how we believe in free speech, even for those we don't agree with, and how we have to defend that. And unfortunately, I think sooner or later, when it comes to the point where these people are, taking over buildings across the country, firebombing them, and they've quite literally killed people. I don't know that we're at that point yet, but sooner or later, we're going to have to say, nah, we don't tolerate them. And that is the difficult question, because they're saying the same thing of us, which I think just lends itself to, then what's the ultimate conclusion? People are going to fight.
I hope not. I hope not. I hear what you're saying. There's part of me that's like, there's a lot of good people left, but more realistically, there aren't that many in shape people left. And it's hard to fight a war when everyone's out of shape.
That doesn't matter. I really do feel like so many people don't understand. The reason why I liked the Civil War movie, I would have loved...
I didn't get to see it yet. Was it good?
It depends on your definition of good. If you want to see a movie out of Civil War, it's not your movie.
Was it entertaining?
I was entertained because I've done conflict reporting, and so I really loved how they showcased the depravity of journalists. And I'm not being cute. I mean that quite literally. When the main character, the dude, while bombs are going off and they're literally killing people and shooting them, he looks over at one of the younger girl journalists and he smiles and nods like, yeah. And then she looks at him and she goes, yeah.
Clicks.
Like, I'm not kidding. This is what they do. It's not about clicks. It's about these people love being there in the destruction, the flames, the fury, without having to reap the repercussions of what that conflict is. They love getting in the face of someone who's been stabbed or shot and just snapping pictures, and they go to their friends and go, yeah, they love it. They're vultures. They call themselves vultures. But the reason why I did like the movie, aside from how they show journalists to be depraved, it wasn't about what it's like. It wasn't about a civil war. It wasn't about the leaders of one government breaking away from the other government and threatening the president. It was about regular people in a civil war and what that's like. Going to a gas station and having a bunch of guys with guns and they're saying, you can't have gas, and then having to negotiate. Looters being strung up and bleeding to death, begging for their lives. See, people are going to say things like, you're saying, oh, there's a lot of out of shape people. That doesn't mean anything. It literally means nothing when you can't walk to the grocery store because you don't know if one guy is in his house looking through his window with a long gun.
No, I hear you.
And that was part of the movie too.
Yeah.
They're driving down the road and then all of a sudden they start getting unloaded on.
You have to consider also that 90% of people do not follow politics like we do. They're not in the know. Civil war breaks out. Most of these people won't even realize why we're at civil war. They'll just know there are guns, there is violence. I'm going to survive and take care of my own.
And there's a scene in the movie, it's in the trailer actually, where the journalists, there's two guys and they're laying on the ground and one guy, that's the sniper rifle, and one guy's, I don't know what it's called, but one guy's like tracking with binoculars, the other guy's shooting, and they're like, what's going on? And it's like, the guy looks at her and he's like, someone is shooting at us. And then there's a pause and then the guy asks again, he's like, well, what are you doing? And he's like, oh, you're stupid. Someone is trying to kill us. We are trying to kill him. They don't know who it is. And they're like, you don't know it? No, you have no idea. And this is true for war in general. People don't get it. Friendly fire is common.
Yeah, they're not going to pass out uniforms and flags, but we might be able to recognize them by their masks.
It's not just that. It's that you're going to hear a gunshot and you're going to hit the deck. And then you don't know. For all there could be two Trump supporters wearing gear and they're not going to know they're two Trump supporters. There could be Antifa and some other leftist faction. They don't know who each other are. It doesn't matter. It's just going to be chaos.
Yeah, my argument is that I don't even think it's going to be based on ideology for the majority of people. I think it's going to be based on survival. If it really does get kinetic like that and cities are burning, again, most people don't follow politics. They don't really have a side. They just know there is chaos and I'm going to survive.
And then it's going to, factionalism in conflict like this is it's not going to be ideological. It's going to be brand. It's going to be someone saying like, look, all I know is those guys are the bad guys.
Yep.
Don't care what you think or why. It will immediately break down into the leaders of one side are going to say, like, the funny thing is, if it really came down to a conflict between the woke left and the Trump supporters, like the left would have you believe that the right and the MAGA people would be racist, white supremacist, only white people, no trans people. Quite literally not true. Both factions will be multi-ethnic and diverse, although I think the left will have more elements of diversity, equity, and inclusion kind of stuff. But for the most part, it's going to be white liberals. It's going to be the same thing. And ultimately what it comes down to is it's going to be people just taking territory and not caring what your name is, who you are, what your beliefs are. They're going to say, are you in conflict or combat or not?
We just got to secure the hormone replacement drugs. That's how we win.
None of that will even exist. That will evaporate from culture in 2 seconds in a conflict. All of these isms and all of these beliefs and all these worldviews only exist in the refined machine. As soon as the machine breaks down and you can't get mouthwash anymore, dental hygiene is gone. And there's not going to be people being like, we have to secure the Listerine factory. No, they're going to be like, do we have the river? How are our people drinking water? And then they're going to be like, the other side came in the middle of the night and torched a wheat field. It's people. I don't think people understand They live in a world of movies and video games, and it's kind of wild to think about. Look at the photos and videos from Aleppo, and there's a guy walking down the street in rubble with a grocery bag. Yeah, he went to the grocery store. He bought groceries. They were expensive groceries, but he did. And that happens. And people seem to think that it doesn't. In Damascus, at the height of the Civil War, there were nightclubs. There's a sarin gas attack a few miles away from the nightclub, and people were just there partying. Like, what are you going to do? So, that being said, let's move on to a bit more fun. We have this story from the Daily Mail. New York City construction worker goes viral for saying exactly what he thinks of Biden after attending Trump visit. This man represents the majority of America. He said something very simple, and
He's wearing his hard hat the right way.
I'm gonna play the video, and so I guess we'll just do a
What's it like seeing so
earmuffs for your kids.
Uh-oh.
Here you go.
What's it like seeing so many Republicans in Manhattan, so many Trump supporters in Manhattan? Does that surprise you?
No, not at all. It's turning now. Trump's turn again.
What's your message to Joe Biden?
Fuck you.
Oh my God.
Okay. So as we're sitting here having this very somber and serious conversation about the uprising of far left extremists, when in New York City, that's the message from a regular old working class guy in construction, maybe we should be a little more optimistic.
Yeah.
Maybe the deep state has failed. The woke, like they tried to wield the woke left, and it's turned against them, and now they hate Israel and they're chanting pro-Hamas things. They've lost control.
I mean, they bet on Joe Biden, and that was a mistake, I will say. Again, he's not doing so well, and he's not as likable. I mean, we were talking about this the other night on the show, but a lot of people were like, oh, he's Obama's vice president. They're best friends. He was the sidekick that people were sort of fond of. And then when he had to become the main character, not only did he stumble in a lot of policy ways, obviously people are suffering with the effects of inflation, but genuinely people just are not engaged by him. If you're a New Yorker, you're not going to pick Biden over Trump if you are looking for someone who roots for the working class and for someone who actually has charisma. Like, these are things that Biden does not have, no matter how hard he tries to pretend otherwise.
Well, also, we had the story and we had the narrative that Obama and Biden were best friends, but we all know about the famous Obama quote from behind the scenes.
Oh, yeah.
Never underestimate Joe's ability to F something up. So
I'm just going to play this again real quick.
Message to Joe Biden.
Fuck you.
Oh, that's
go.
my new
Joe
ringtone.
Wait.
Trump's turn again.
What's your message to Joe Biden?
Fuck you.
dude, the way it's just the head movement. He's like, you.
So, like, maybe we should be concerned the deep state's lost control of the woke left, but then when you find out that they've lost control of the New York City construction workers, I think maybe we'll be okay.
It's true. Oh my gosh, that's hilarious.
One can only hope.
I'm an eternal optimist. I mean, I do hope the country gets back on track, and I would like to see Trump back in office. I'd love to see him just go gung-ho and arrest everyone and gulags, and that'd be fantastic.
But the issue is, the deep state may be struggling to maintain control. These charges against Trump are desperate moves. But even if Trump does get in office, they're still there. We say this about Trump supporters. When they say censor them, shut them down, lock them up, it's like, yeah, they're not gone. They're still there. Mm-hmm. If Trump does get elected, I don't imagine a reality where Trump cleanly and easily goes in and starts arresting people. I don't see a situation where Trump wins and he goes, the DOJ will now be investigating the corrupt actions of the New York State prosecutors, the DA, the judges. They're going to say, okay, Trump, it's on. Let me put it this way. Ukraine for a long time was a battle of soft power. And I think soft power is appropriate, and it's how we should handle things. You influence, you offer resources, you support the politicians you like, and Russia and the US were doing that in Ukraine. Russia lost. The soft power battle went towards the US and NATO. So Russia said, fine, war, and invaded, because they're like, that's it. That's where we go when soft power stops working. Yeah, I think right now they're trying soft power against Trump.
Yep.
And it's converting into hard power. What I mean is they media manipulation, financial manipulation, targeting censorship and all these things were soft power. Now that they're moving into crimes that don't exist in statutory law, now that they're trying to jail Trump and strip the office of powers, it is shifting from soft to hard power.
Yeah, exactly.
Threatening Trump with incarceration by physical force is crossing the Rubicon, and it was done by Democrats. If Trump wins, Rubicon's already been crossed.
Yeah, I mean, they're absolutely terrified. So when you look at how things began with Donald Trump back in 2015 when he announced his candidacy, from that point onward, I don't think I can point to a single other person in living memory who the media did more to destroy, and none of it worked. Normally, that works for them, right? Normally, the character assassination stuff is pretty effective, but it wasn't here. So once that wasn't effective, they had to move into lawfare. Well, what's going to happen if lawfare isn't effective? That's where things start to get kind of scary.
Well, but we're beyond lawfare. Lawfare was suing Trump, the civil case. They are quite literally saying they will put Trump behind bars. That is a threat of physical violence against him. And there's no statutory law. This has to be repeated over and over again because this is the line. Trump's criminal trial in New York is not based on any standing statutory law. That's it.
Yes.
And the TV can say over and over again, there's no crime. Fox News can say it over and over again, there's no crime. I think people need to understand what that means. See, legislature says, here's a bill, you are not allowed to kick dogs. And then they all vote on it and say, okay, we've passed the bill. You cannot kick dogs. And if you do, here's the penalty range. What Trump has been charged with doesn't exist. They just came out and said, arrest Trump. And Trump was like, I guess I'll show up for it. So we're already at the point where this is no different in my mind than NYPD officers breaking into some random woman's home, putting her in a car, dragging her to an undisclosed location, and putting her in a cage. They're under nothing in the law can they be doing this, and they're all doing it anyway.
I think we're stuck on a path to accelerationism. I really, really do. I think that we are just on that path, and that's where we're going. Now, the difference between Trump and the Democrats is I believe the Democrats, when they say I want to return to normal, they mean that. They want to get back to business as usual, funding wars, all these things, right? Trump is an accelerant as well. Trump gets in office, what he's doing is more of a controlled burn instead, and that's what concerns them. They're both accelerants. One will get us back to normal. It's a wildfire at this point. They're just throwing everything at the wall. Trump is a controlled burn.
I actually see a path towards stabilization, a possibility, and that would be deep state intelligence agents meeting with Donald Trump and saying, ceasefire, saying, you will be the next president. You will live comfortably. Let us know what you're willing to accept in terms of concessions, and we stop this conflict now before the country loses control. I think Trump would say yes. Maybe that's why Trump was working with Republicans on supporting Ukraine and Israel war funding.
That's the same thing as putting Biden in office, though. That's the same thing.
Yeah,
I disagree. It's I think what happens with Trump 2016 is they bring him into the SCIF and they say, I don't know if they would actually bring him into the SCIF, but they bring him in the secure room, say, here's what's going on, and Trump says, okay, yeah, no. And then they said, this is our plan, do it or else, as they often do with presidents, and Trump said no. Mike Johnson said yes. It was Jack Posobiec who tweeted that. I think this time around, I think it might be if the proposition is this country falls into decay, conflict, and crisis between two warring factions, or they capitulate, allow Trump to be president, but ask for concessions, I think that's the better option.
Concessions being people need to be arrested. People need to be brought on charges. People need to be brought in. There need to be indictments.
What if they said, okay, Trump, here's what we're going to do. No more wars. You win the foreign policy. We pull our troops back. Diplomacy, peace agreements, border security, bringing our jobs back, America first, national, and all of the policies you wanted. No strings attached, except no arrests.
I think they would throw some low-level people under the bus before they roll back any of the foreign policy stuff.
Yeah, but I don't think Trump accepts that. I'm saying like they go to Trump, and actually Trump might accept some foreign policy stuff. Apparently, Trump was working with Mike Johnson and other Republicans on the foreign funding bill.
Yeah, he was.
So I would not be surprised to hear that what's actually going on with the far left protesters being, let's say this. I've entertained the possibility that China, through TikTok and and not necessarily just China, but other countries, subverted the woke left, destabilizing the deep state's plan, turning the woke left into anti-Israel, subverting U.S. foreign policy. Donald Trump says he's pro-Israel. What if what actually happened is the deep state went to Trump and they said, we can't win. And this doesn't end well for either of us. So how about we just ceasefire? Biden's out, you're in, you win 2020. The Trump supporters feel vindicated. They feel like they've got their country back. We'll give you a handful of concessions. You'll live comfortably. We'll leave your family alone. There will be some arrests. The wokeness will lose, but we will still be here after you leave.
It's the other half of the population that showed up to his inauguration and set buildings on fire. What do we do with them? Because the people will not stand for Trump being elected again. So if we're talking about two different territories. Is it better that politicians make peace? Because the people will still make war.
But I disagree. And I think, I have no idea what's going on behind the scene, but entertaining the possibility, these anti-Israel protests are pissing everybody off. Like I said, there are celebrities that I've seen on social media posting like these protests have become anti-Semitic. And I'm like, that's an interesting message. Did like their agent tell them to post that or something?
Yeah.
Because they do the black square and the rainbow flag, and now they're posting we stand with the Jewish community here, no anti-Semitism, trying to shift that narrative to make it seem like the left is the hate-filled, extremists. So how do you deal with them? First of all, Trump's already winning in the polls. You have to placate, but I wonder if Trump conceding some ground, but ultimately getting to implement his policies. Or even if look at the I think it was 1876 was the election where the alternate dual electors were sent by different states, and I think it was I can't remember what happened. I think the Republican won the popular vote, but then they gave it to the Democrat. Someone, if you can fact check me on this one. Ultimately, the president was chosen by a committee seeking to avoid war. I wonder if that is the better option. I don't see this escalating to conflict being a good thing that anybody wants, and anybody who says they want it has never experienced conflict. No. The people who all have experienced war and conflict are the ones online saying, you don't want it, stop now before it's too late. So if the deep state went to Trump and said, you're going to win, but we're going to compromise, I think the right move is for Trump to say yes. Otherwise, what happens? You don't get eggs anymore. There's no milk. There's no bread. Far leftists are taking over different cities. There's gun battles. We don't want any of that stuff.
I'm proposing they do it if he does win. That is...
You think that even if he wins, they'll just do it anyway?
Yes, I do. These people have been weaponized. They've been told for the past 6-7 years now, this man is literally Hitler. And when he comes into office, it is your job to make sure that it is uncomfortable for him.
Yeah, how do you roll that back, right? How do you say, like, well, this guy's Hitler, but we'll make a deal with him. And to be fair, communists literally made a deal with actual Hitler early on. So who knows? Who knows? Maybe they would compromise. These aren't people who have real value.
Then the scary reality is there's no off-ramp.
This is kind of where I'm at. And again, taking that deal just puts Biden in office. We're still at the same speed. It's business as usual. The people have been deeply involved in politics since COVID because they had nothing left to look at. They're angry on both sides. What calms them down? It's not Trump in office. It's not Biden in office.
Looked like it was the election of 1876, if that helps. And it was...
Who won the popular vote? Was it the Republican?
It was... It says Rutherford Hayes needed all 3 votes that South Carolina challenged, saying they were legitimate. Maybe we're thinking about different elections.
No, 1876. Yeah, my understanding is that the guy who won the popular vote wasn't given the presidency because they had compromised to avoid civil war. They were on the verge of America falling into civil war again. It was during Reconstruction, and they said, you end, or maybe it was the other way around, and they gave it to the Republican, I'm not sure. They said, you end Reconstruction, we'll give you the presidency, we won't fight about it.
I think the only thing that brings people back together is some type of catastrophe, some type of national...
No, I disagree.
Look at 9/11. What did that do to everyone?
Yeah, that was a different time, man.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think about this sometimes because, I've got friends from the South who, after 9/11 were inspired to join the military, right? People who didn't know a single person from New York, who'd never been there, but they saw that as an attack on their country. Honestly, I think today, if some city in the South was attacked, left-wing New Yorkers would not see that as an attack on their country. They'd see it as an attack on other people who they don't care about. And similarly, I think if left-wing people in New York were attacked, I think conservatives in red states would not see it as an attack on America. Yep. I think they'd see it as an attack on left-wing people. I just don't see a tragedy like that uniting the country at this point.
I think if an attack happened on one of these like anti-Israel protests, there would be a ton of people on Twitter just laughing.
I agree. I think, though, if there is a common enemy pointed out, people would gather together.
I don't think so.
They need someone to hate together.
Right now, you've got people on the right saying, not everybody, but there are people on the right saying that Putin is defending like traditional conservative Christianity and things like that, and they believe he's a good guy. He is not a good guy. He is another competing interest vying for power. But you have people saying these things. You have people who are on the left who have gone to China and celebrated the Chinese Communist Party. You have Trudeau cheering for it. We have such a strong ideological division. If conflict really broke out, like if Trump were to get elected, I would not be surprised if West Coast states asked China for help and said, look, we love China. We need your help. Trump's a fascist. Aliens could invade Earth, and I don't think we'd find unity. We'd be like, aliens, get them. No, I think what would happen is the left would start making some ridiculous argument about a chance for peace and learning and understanding. The right would take a security approach and say, we can't just assume that foreign like alien travelers from other planets are going to be secure. And then the left will start calling the right evil bigots and racists. And then it's busted. I don't know.
Well, I'm going to try to stay positive about it,
So what's your prediction for the election and for, the months afterwards?
Well, I don't know if Trump is even going to be able to run. I really don't. If the idea is the deep state's doing all of this to try to make sure he can't run, why would they even put him on the ballot? Why would they do that? I know we've had cases go up where they try to take him off and they put him back on. Hey, you can't do that. But who says they won't?
You think he won't even appear on the ballot?
I don't think he will. I don't. I don't see how they let that happen.
So no Trump running? Like who's the Republican then?
Oh, Nikki Haley. She's best for everyone.
Well,
it's either
and
that
you stand
or
by
yay.
that sentiment. I want a clarification.
Okay, I figured it out. Trump and Biden hold a public meeting to bury the hatchet. Mm-hmm. Trump says, we can't go on this way. We're going to have a conversation. So I'm meeting with Joe. He's a good guy. I've said some bad things about him. And then Joe's like, come on, man. Like, we got to come together like Americans. And then they meet. They shake hands. And then both get beamed up by an alien spacecraft. Nikki Haley runs out and goes, no, I guess now I'm going to be the president. And everyone claps.
Then QAnon's right again because Project Bluebeam.
Project Bluebeam takes away Trump, right? I don't know about all that. I can't see how Trump would not be the guy.
I mean, he's nomination right now. I don't see how they let him run. If the sentiment, like again, we're watching this video, the sentiment is people are really pissed off at Joe Biden. He's looking good in the polls. Why would they let him run if he's going to win? They're doing everything to not let him win.
Yeah, I was going to say, would it be like he's ineligible because he loses a court case? Like, how would they keep him off the ballot? They just forget to print his name?
Well, is the smearing effective enough? Okay, let's say he is on the ballot. Is the smearing effective enough to get people to show up for him? If he has multiple felonies that convicted him, will people show up to vote for someone who is in prison?
Yeah.
I think
there's
been
a lot of people throughout history who have been imprisoned on one political power.
I know DeSantis voters are not showing up to vote, and that is a reasonable amount of people.
I can't see. I've met way too many people equally who are like, I voted for Biden. It was a mistake. I won't do it again. Doesn't mean they're voting for Trump. What if we just get record low voter turnout?
Yeah.
It's 10 million people vote and that's it.
There was a poll really recently that said this is the least amount of interest that people have had in the election since 2008.
Isn't that wild with how crazy everything is right now?
Yeah, people talk about politics constantly, but I think it's almost disenfranchising people. I think there are people who are like, it doesn't matter what I do, things are just getting so bad, and I don't like any of the options. And, it becomes like stress avoidance. It's so stressful to think about the fate of the country and how badly you need things to change that you sort of want to opt out. It's not really the best option, but I think there are a lot of people who almost want to avoid the polls because they feel like no matter what, they're doing the wrong thing.
I blame Marvel. People are tired of sequels.
And this is the ultimate sequels matchup here.
I wonder if everyone is just burned out of everything. For real,
Yeah,
it's
just tired.
tired of everything though.
It's been a crazy couple of years.
There's with no centralized culture, there's no mission, there's no plan, there's nothing to hope for, there's nothing to wake
nothing
up
to celebrate. There are very few wins that everyone is like, yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's like the further you go back with the unified culture, you wake up and you're like, I really want to accomplish this thing. I'll feel good and people will cheer me on. But now it's everything's so just shattered and fractured nobody cares anymore about any of it.
You gotta look for positives.
But I think it's just become like hyper personal.
Yeah, well, it's true. So obviously, historically, when communication was limited, people had their own niche interests in a certain town or community or village might have their fables and stories, and you would not be united to people with respect to the kind of entertainment that you watched if they were somewhere very far away from you. And by watched, I mean like literally like watched in person prior to television. But there was this interesting sweet spot in history where mass communication existed, but only a very small percentage of people could actually afford to produce it. And so everyone just got the same mass entertainment. And we view that as normal, and it's strange that that's changing, but that's not historically normal. We're actually kind of returning to historic norms in a lot of ways. And in many ways, that's really a very good thing. In other ways, it's troubling. I mean, for example, accents cross-nationally have pretty much been eliminated by mass communication.
Yeah.
People used to speak in very different dialects in different places, and now everyone sounds roughly similar. And I think niche art forms were eliminated. I mean, you go across the United States today, and you could be fooled as to where you are because everywhere has the same stores, right?
Yeah.
Everywhere has the same gas stations.
that's true
Everywhere has
around
the
the world.
same restaurants. I know. Everything's become so homogenized. So I don't exactly think it's a step in the wrong direction that at least our entertainment's becoming more niche. I think it's kind of a good
Yeah,
thing.
I
And it
think
allows for the development of some unique content.
What I mean is, there's no shared vision of a people.
No,
So-
that's not good.
So they don't care, and
Sure.
then it just becomes random.
Yeah, well, I mean, because historically, right, you had a time before mass communication, but where, for example, throughout the West or Christendom, people were Christian. They had the same moral vision, even if they had different kinds of foods or they preferred different kinds of entertainment or told different kinds of stories. They were still on board with a singular unifying message. You're right that that's also not the case anymore.
I mean, I think it's sort of a lack
Tower
of
of Babel, everything's become smashed into pieces and we can't communicate with each other anymore.
Right. I mean, I think there is sort of an overarching lack of patriotism, right? Like people don't generally all agree like America's a good place and we have good values and we want to keep making it better. I think there are definitely a lot, especially with young voters. I think there is a big split between people who are like, I think this is a good country, and other ones who have grown up hearing it's uncool to praise America, and so they won't. And I think, to your point, regional culture in America is very powerful because we are such a large geographic country that being able to say like, well, in my part of the world, this is how we do things. These are our social customs. These are like local, even like fruits that we use in this way, and it makes out this product that we all get excited about. Like this is a regional tradition. I think sort of the last great vestige I can think of this in America is state fairs. Like the Minnesota State Fairs always gets a ton of coverage because it's so big, or the Texas State Fair.
County fairs, we got county fairs out here.
County fairs, and those are good too. And I think they are like, it's one of the best parts of like late summer. But I think this idea that like there is something that everybody in your state goes to and is just excited about, and you have a good time, like that's very far and few between.
City folk don't get it. Out here, we have all these different county fairs, and you can see cows and pigs and chickens. Some people have 2 cows.
Well, and people compete in it. You'll enter like quilts or baked goods or whatever. Like it's a time to come in. You can like go to exhibition halls. Like these ideas that we are sort of coming together to look at what other people are doing and to say like, hey, you're the best at growing watermelon or whatever it is. Like it sounds so almost folksy. On the other hand, it gives you something to sort of look forward to and to come together as a community.
Yeah, you can milk the cow. They have like cow milking stations. And then if you come at the right time, they will let you actually take milk from the cow. There. And you can walk into the different barns, and they'll have rabbits, and they'll have just all different kinds of animals. They have like all different kinds of chickens. And so you can walk in and see all the different kind of livestock that everybody has. So there'll be like emus, and it's fun because it's just like a local community thing. And then you see like the gigantic hogs just laying there smelling like crap. And they have alpacas, which are hilarious and look creepy, but are funny at the same time.
I think we have
It's good
two
fun.
versions of the American dream. I really, really do. I think one of them, for the liberals, like they are able to achieve it, right? It's, don't get married, don't have kids, get money, be selfish, do all the things that make you happy, right? Self-centered. And they're achieving that not being happy. The American dream for someone like me is have a big family, like afford a house, do that Americana stuff, go to fairs.
Eat corn.
They can't do that either. because there's no money. People are broke.
Yeah.
They can't afford to buy houses. Interest rates are really high. So you've got one set of people getting their American dream, getting their way that are miserable, and one set of people who can't actually get it.
Well, that's funny. It's like at these fairs, what are you hoping to accomplish? Like the guy
Community.
It's recreation.
No, but it's like that's a given. When you show up to the community fair and you bring your large rabbits, why are you doing that? Because you want to show your neighbors how big you've grown these rabbits, and you're excited about it. You're passionate about your rabbits, and I'm not even kidding. Like we went to like 3 or 4 last year. They're fun, and there's like a big cage and this massive rabbit, and everyone's like, "Wow, look at that guy's like, look at this rabbit. Yeah, I feed him."
Yeah.
And then in the big cities, what do they have? Spin rims, gold chains. No, for real. It's like,
No, I know.
yeah, it's
just sad.
What are they trying to accomplish? So the thing is, the amount of money you need to, if you're in a city and you're trying to show off status, and you want to be high value or whatever, a lot of money. But if you want to be high value at the community fair, you just got to get a big chicken.
Put a lot of work in.
You just breed, you breed breed your chickens, some Jersey Giants maybe, and make a real big one, and then show them, be like, look how big my rooster is. And they go, wow, that is a big rooster. And that's it.
You need land for that. You need time for
Yeah.
that.
Yep.
That these are things that people don't have anymore.
Yeah.
They can't afford anymore.
Yeah. I think the economic aspect is true. I mean, part of one of the bittersweet things about people going through tough economic times is that they have to say, like, are we going to buy tickets to the fair, right? If it costs gas to get to it, are we going to do that? On the other hand, I think people who live in cities which are sort of epicenters for promoting consumerism, they're infinitely more bitter because they can't just like go to their backyard and hang out, right? Like the idea that you are always paying crazy amounts of rent and you always are being told, well, you need to have this thing, you have that thing. I'm not saying that kind of consumerism doesn't occur to people who live outside cities, but it's just, to me, it seems like the pathway towards bitterness and there's no reprieve from it.
When the lockdowns first happened, we were in Deptford, New Jersey, and we had a backyard with a large concrete slab that we had skate stuff on and a mini ramp for skateboarding. We had music. We had a little fire pit that we built, some stone. And then after the show, we'd go out, light a fire and have marshmallows, and we were hanging out. And we didn't really go out all that often as it was. And we ended up leaving after a few months when the lockdowns were getting heavy. But I was thinking about it after the fact because I wasn't in New York City. Most of the people were locked in a studio or one bedroom. They couldn't leave. Like, sure, they could go outside, but there was nothing outside. The stores were all closed. There was nowhere to go. So they were sitting at home and just watching TV, and their brains were frying. They were losing vitamin D. Meanwhile, me and my friends were hanging out in the backyard, skateboarding, roasting marshmallows, grilling burgers. And it was the same for us for the most part. We'd go to the grocery store and everyone's wearing masks. It's like, okay. Then we'd go home and we'd grill burgers and we'd make pizzas. We'd play Magic the Gathering. And I was like, didn't really notice much. It started to get a little heavy. We got scared when they were talking about shutting the bridges down. And I was like, I don't know how far this goes, but I do not want to be stuck in the New Jersey Peninsula when they close the bridges. And we were planning on moving anyway. So I was like, let's move early. And then we came out to the tri-state area. Now we're formally 100% in West Virginia. But especially then coming out here, it was unrestricted in any way. Now, Maryland was nuts, Frederick especially. But in West Virginia, they had like mask mandates and nobody did it. Yep. And you drove around, everything was open, everything was normal. The crazy thing I would say is the casino, it was free money. No joke. So, man, what a time to be alive. There was a casino up in Maine that still had last year COVID restrictions in place. Let me explain to y'all what this means. So they have card games, table games, as you know, in casinos. One of these table games is called Mississippi Stud. You ever hear of it?
No.
Okay, here's how the game's played. Everyone puts an ante up. Usually it's like $5 to $20. So there's 4 betting positions. You put a $5 down, and the dealer, he or she, gives you two cards. You can't show anybody your cards, though. It's against the rules. In fact, if you show your cards, you can get kicked out of these casinos. Why? 3 cards are placed up top. You look down at your 2 cards. If you think they're good, because you're trying to make a good 5-card poker hand, you can bet 1 to 3 times in the next position to reveal 1 more card. So here's the thing. The purpose of the game is to get a hand that is a pair of jacks or better. Jacks, queens, kings, aces, straights, flushes, 3 of a kind, 4 of a kind, etc. Well, the reason why you can't tell anybody what cards you have in your hand is because then they'll know if they can win or lose before they spend any money. So if you got a full table of 6 people and you look down at your cards and you've got ace, king. You're like, oh boy, if there's an ace or a king up top, the 3 cards that are not revealed, I will win double my money. But you don't know yet. So you could make all the bets and then lose and take your money. If I only knew what everyone else had. So during COVID, everyone was forced to play with their hands face up and they weren't allowed to touch the cards. The dealers were all wearing masks and gloves and would place the cards in front of everybody. And you'd look down and go, okay, I got ace, king, ace, king, ace, king. None of us can win. Everyone folds. It was nuts. And there was a casino in Maine last year, like this is not even like barely last year, it's like 8 months ago, that still had this in play. And people apparently travel across the country to go there because the casino just loses money from it. Yeah, it's like if not all games are like this, like blackjack is played face up. But if you're playing a game where you're trying to figure out if you can make a pair and what your odds are, but you can see all the other cards, that was the insanity of COVID. And that was the only thing I would say that was different in West Virginia, is that I walked into the casino and there's plastic separating everything and you can't touch your cards. So they show you everything everyone has. And I was like, I didn't understand what was going on though. So I ended up losing.
It was wild. So right before COVID began, I was up in the Chicago area with my family. And then I didn't leave until like May. I got locked out. I couldn't get another rental car. I couldn't leave. Dude, I went back down to Georgia where I live, and it was like I was back in America. It was crazy. Things were so locked down in Chicago. You couldn't go anywhere. You couldn't do anything. And then in Georgia, it was just like life had continued to happen. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah, and I think it speaks partially to the cultures, right? Like beyond the politics of it. If you live in rural places, you kind of just have to keep going, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you don't live around that many people anyway, so you just keep going on with life, whereas cities came to a grinding halt. Maybe that's a sign that, like, you know, these systems that they're dependent on are maybe not a long-term solution.
Yeah.
We're going to go to Super Chats. So if you haven't already, would you kindly smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, share this with your friends, head over to timcast.com, click join us to become a member and support our work, because this show is made possible thanks to part of viewers like you. We are operating because we have members. You guys basically allow us to do the show and do everything we're doing. Were it not for you, we wouldn't be here. Probably just be doing a morning show, so I really do appreciate it. YouTube has gotten a bit censorious. They shut down our 2 biggest shows, so we really could use your support. But we are in the middle of, I will just say this, going over contracts. So I don't want to say too much because third parties are involved in their privacy matters, and nothing's finalized. But let me just stress, we will not tolerate the censorious actions of YouTube, which many people have been, telling us about more and more. I think, in spite of YouTube's actions in trying to shut us down, silo us, and isolate us, with your support as members, as well as everyone who shares the show, it's become increasingly difficult for them to do. And I will also add, they will not let us run ads to promote the show. Every single ad I've made, save one, that has been so right now the point is we are siloed. They're making sure only certain people can see the show. So I'm like, okay, I'll run an ad targeting other markets, and they claim it's all election advertisements, and we're not allowed to do it. So I think it's fairly obvious. They're like, no, keep them in the bubble, don't let them out. But we got a big move coming up, and I think we're going to be doing a massive marketing plan too. So I have to wait a little bit. Lawyers are going over final paperwork as I speak with top men. What I can say is follow the show, subscribe to us here. Follow the show at rumble.com/Timcast IRL and X at Timcast, because those are going to be very important in the future. In the meantime, we'll read your super chats. Clint Torres, of course, the first super chat says, "Howdy, people." Howdy, Clint. Clint says, I've said it before, but I'll say it once more. If you are first, it's only because I allowed it. Heavens.
Dang. That guy means business.
Alpha Turkey says, commencements just canceled at USC, ripped to class of 2020-2024.
Yeah, because their high school graduations got canceled and then their college graduations got canceled.
Should have pulled a Tim back in 3rd grade and dropped out. I'm kidding, not really. I dropped out freshman year and then did homeschooling and never got my GED or diploma because those don't do anything for you.
Tim just canceled. He dropped out of school in kindergarten. He was like, Mom, I'm done with this.
So the funny thing was,
he said the teacher is censoring me. She's keeping me in a silo. I'm talking to top men.
You can go to a community college as soon as you turn 18. You don't need a degree. Mm-hmm. You can take any classes you want. You pay cash for them. And so when I'm 16, I'm working at a fast food restaurant. When I'm 17, I think I don't think I was working at all. And then when I turned 18, I'm like, so if I just get like a credit hour at this community college, I can put down some college on all my job applications. Done. And then I went for like 2 months. And then after that, I applied to work at American Eagle Airlines, which is AA. And they asked me what my highest level of education was. And I put some college. And they said, good. My friend who put high school, they said, bring your diploma and bring your paperwork. They wanted proof he had one. But because I had some college, they said, you're fine. That was it.
Wow.
Yep.
Please tell me you took like a really fun juggling class at community college. Or like,
Criminal justice.
oh, that's good.
Nice.
Yeah, and I learned about serial killers and stuff.
Because you just graduated, right?
I did, yeah. I graduated, yeah.
Oh, congratulations.
I only went back because they told me I couldn't.
The other thing I would say too is I got hired as a director of a nonprofit. That was a college degree was a requirement, and I did not have one, and I applied anyway. But I was a nation's best fundraiser, and so I didn't like it said, college degree required. I submitted a resume, and they called me and they were like, you do know this job requires a college application. And I was like, yeah, and I'm a nation's best fundraiser, however you want. So they brought me in for an interview, and then I said, they asked me a bunch of questions. I talked to them about my experience, and they're like, you sound like you know what you're talking about. And they said, but this job does require a college diploma. And I said, sure. If you want to hire a kid fresh out of college with no experience in nonprofit work or fundraising, by all means, do it with my blessing. Congratulations. But if you want to hire a nation's best fundraiser for this position, you hire me. And they went, okay, you're hired. They didn't say it like that. They were like, we'll let you know. And then 2 days later, they called me and said, we'd like you to work here. Nice. So I've just always been like, dude, if that piece of paper ain't going to do nothing for you. Mm-mm. Anyway, we'll read some more Super Chats. All right. T-Rex Pet Shop says, weird how Dems scream that Republicans are taking away women's rights, but literally take away women's rights as Biden changed Title IX to include gender identity. Now boys can take over girls' spaces. Scary. Also, did you see Biden's largest tax increase in history plan for 2025?
What a great guy.
Did you see his capital gains to, I think, 44.6%?
Yeah.
And a new 25% unrealized gains tax.
It is literally not possible to tax unrealized gains. It's insane.
Yeah, so the idea is if you have $25 and you buy 25 shares at $1 from some company, and then a month later, those shares are now worth $1,000. You now have $25,000 worth of shares. They come to you and they say, now you have to pay us 25% of the $24,975 gain you saw. And you're like, but I don't have any money. I only had $25 and I just have these shares. And they go, sell them. You have to sell what you own to pay the government.
Does this extend to property? Does this extend to like
Yep.
fantastic. Well, Hunter Biden's going to be screwed. He's got a lot of artwork worth a lot of money.
It may not. It may not, though. It may specifically be stocks and trades. And it's only for those who have an income of over $1 million and an investment income of $400,000. Regardless.
That's where it starts.
Right. The first income tax was a 3% tax on the ultra wealthy or something like that. They were like, it's only for the ultra wealthy. Now we're at 39% on the average American?
Yeah, thank God there aren't loopholes like, claiming losses and investing in yourself.
Yeah, but that's not a loophole. That's the intended position.
Oh, yeah.
So when I explained this in a segment earlier, when Biden raises taxes, I go, okay. All that means is that as a business, we have to expand. When the taxes are low, we could be like, we can take it easy. When taxes are high, it's like, well, might as well hire people and grow the business because otherwise the government just gets your money. So if you have $100,000 profit, think about it. It's like, okay, so the government's going to take 40% of that, leave me with $60K. Okay. That means that if you hire someone at $60K, you have $40K left over, you keep $30K, so you're getting that employee at a discount for $30K because you would have lost the 40 as it was. So now you got a $60K employee at $30K. That's what they do when they tax things. They just force companies to spend money on investing in anything that could be written off or depreciated. And businesses, I think, I could be wrong, I think you get $1 million per year in equipment write-offs. So a lot of companies just say, make sure you spend $1 million a year on equipment because the equipment retains its value and you don't get taxed on it.
That's
Incredible.
interesting.
Yep. Let's go. Kale says, what do you think is a realistic salary for a congressman, senator, Supreme Court justice, and president? I think we should increase their salary and eliminate their insider trading. Agreed. And I don't know. I think a salary for a member of Congress, I would probably say Supreme Court justices. I'd like to see maybe, I got to be honest. I think they get like what, 200 and something.
Supreme Court justices?
Yeah, I kind of feel like that's good right now, and it really does depend on the market. But 300 perhaps for a president, he gets 400, and
This is saying $298,500.
okay, good. Yeah, I think that's a decent amount. Yeah, for
I was going to say
Supreme
you were very close with your guess of 300,000. Or
Well, I mean, I read a bunch of news, so I knew the number basically. President, I think, is 400. You want to fact check that one? I think that,
sure.
But it's like hasn't been updated in a long time. The president should probably get this day and age $1 million a year. I think it's the president, right? We don't want politicians to seek incentives outside of office through favors and deals, so we want them to do well.
Mm-hmm.
I think Congress needs to make more money, absolutely. I don't think $174,000 is enough. Members of Congress need to have an office. They need to have, they do get that money from the government as to how they run their offices and stuff like this, but they have to have a place of residence in their district and in DC. And there are members of Congress who sleep in their offices and they're not supposed to, but they do. People don't understand that it's really expensive to live in DC. And if your salary as a member of, like all you do is you're a member of Congress and you're not ultra wealthy, then how will you even afford this? Mm-hmm. And then it's no surprise only the ultra wealthy become politicians. Yeah. But I don't know if that there's always unintended consequences. So I don't know if there's any good answer to that.
Yeah.
I just don't want to give them any money at all. They're so bad with it.
Yep. So the issue is, some people have suggested we don't pay them at all. It should be a public service. Mm-hmm. It's like, okay, then people monetize it in other ways.
Yeah, exactly.
And then I think Andrew Yang said $1 million. It's like, okay, here's an idea: $1 million a year salary, but you can never work in the private sector again in any way.
Don't they vote to give themselves raises? Aren't they actually in
they
control of
haven't
that?
done it in like 20 years, though, right? I mean, it was.
Oh no, I think it's been.
They do it pretty frequently, right?
Yeah, so they're not worried about their pay.
What about this idea? You can never work so once you get elected to Congress, you get $1 million a year, you get a pension, but you can never work in the private sector.
I like that.
That's a tough one.
The last time they raised their salary was 2009.
Because then they'll never do anything useful again.
Last
What do
time
you mean?
Congress raised their salary was 2009 from $169,000, $300 to $174,000.
Wow. All right. Jonathan Timmons says, listen to you guys every night. When can we buy your coffee wholesale? My wife started her bakery, Okie Dokie Bakery in Oklahoma City, and wants to start offering coffee at some point. Oh. I do believe we have wholesale pricing, but I don't know for sure. Maybe go to the website and see if you can send an email.
Owning a bakery is a Hallmark, or it's like a Hallmark movie job, and I love it. Like people who own bakeries, like boutiques, a bookstore, you know what I mean?
Well, yeah, but you got to be careful then because, one day when you come back to visit and you got that city slicker husband who's kind of rude,
and
but
hates
then
Christmas.
He texts during dinner,
right? And then you see that guy from high school who's dreamy and hardworking carpenter, and then you realize he was the right guy all along. It breaks up your marriage.
Well, sometimes if you own the bakery, a city slicking business guy comes in and he's gruff, but then you fall in love with him. It's very confusing, especially if she's already married. Dangerous.
Yeah,
there's so many movies like that. It's kind of wild. It's like so brutal.
Yeah, well, isn't it so interesting that there's so much entertainment that encourages people to break their marriages up? It's almost as if there's some kind of Marxist ideology that's infested our culture.
Hold on.
I don't know.
If you watch the Great American Family Channel, they're always all single and they don't kiss. They just sort of look at each other and fall in love. It's amazing.
There was like a meme that showed all the covers for all the Hallmark movies, and they're all basically the same thing.
Yes, it's great. I
We
love
used to
it.
celebrate long marriages. It used to be something you were proud of.
Yeah.
It's like, so I'm coming up on my 13th year of marriage.
Good for you,
And
man.
I could not be happier.
Wow.
We are still very much in love. We used to celebrate that.
How did you guys meet? Did you meet at a bakery?
Actually-
Does she own a bookstore?
Do you love Christmas?
It was actually a blind date. It was a blind date at a bar. I wasn't even supposed to be the guy that was supposed to be there. That guy was sick, so I got called in as a replacement. Just a backup guy. It was a double date.
He was a Lectern
JV.
salesman.
You were the
who
guy
had
who was supposed to be there. That's the truth. That's
Yeah,
providential,
that is
man.
true.
Well, it was actually kind of cool. So we both were married before going through divorce. She's divorced, and she had prayed. She's like, I don't know if I'm going to marry again, but if I do, like God, like I really want to go to the aquarium. That was kind of her private prayer, right? I show up one day, we're dating for a few weeks, and I had plans to take her to Busch Gardens, have a whole day, lots of fun. I'm on my way over there, and I just can't stop thinking about, I want to go to the aquarium today. So I show up to the door, knock on the door, like, hey, Susie, what's going on? I was like, do you want to go to the aquarium? And she's like, why would you ask me that? Why would you ask me that? We ended up getting
'cause
married.
I'm your husband.
I know, exactly, right? So it's just, I don't know. I think we're meant to be together. And
That's so cool. I love that. Also, that's a Hallmark movie.
All right. Paul Tascalo says all the hypotheticals are ridiculous. If the president did something completely insane, the 25th Amendment would be invoked to remove him. Right.
The
Agreed.
hypotheticals during the Supreme Court were making me crazy. They were like, but what if he accepted a bribe and gave someone a diplomat? Like, yes, these are good ethical concerns, but also like, let's talk about...
He gets impeached and removed.
Yeah.
Like, I don't understand.
Let's talk about the way the law works here.
It's just like, what if Trump punched a goat? It's like, okay, and then Congress could impeach him. Like,
So it's something more.
Should have done a cartoon of this, of them just coming up with increasingly
You
absurd
still could.
hypotheticals.
Yeah, you still
Look,
could.
team, it's
Well,
possible.
what if Trump got in a blimp and threw a bunch of beach balls at a football game?
What if Trump, he tied two cats' tails together and then he threw them over a telephone wire like a pair of shoes, and they wrapped around it and fought?
But they're
Would
not
that-
saying his
You
name.
should
Then
make
would
the
that?
cartoon.
Then could
all
you do
like-
that?
they're like-
I suppose you'd have to impeach him before.
What if Trump went to
That-
McDonald's and didn't tip them after ordering a bunch of food?
What
Would
if,
that be an
sir, that's
official
not against the
position?
law.
But they're not
What
saying
if-
Trump. They're just like the president. We won't say who, but what if the president?
what if the president took a large roll of plastic wrap and wrapped someone's car up all the way around it so that when they came to their car, it was covered in plastic wrap?
The attorney has to be
could
like-
he be prosecuted for that?
It's
What
like
if he
that would be
would-
an official part of his official duties. So.
Had secret,
could be.
What if he
It
had
could be.
secret medical experiments where they were replacing people's arms with their legs and legs with their arms? Would he be able to do that? Is that something that could be allowed?
And then
You
it's-
have to
and
make
then,
this
and then-
cartoon.
and then one of the questions has to be
And then a
something.
guy comes up who's got arms, who's got legs for arms. And
It's got to be a
he's like,
question.
this is a serious issue.
There's got to be a question of something that they want to do, and they're like, "What if there was like a judge who wanted to buy a car and give the car to his girlfriend his wife didn't know about?
Could the president be impeached for that? If it was a
could a justice be impeached?
Would I be able to do that?
What, does immunity extend to
Theoretically,
us?
Does it?
Yeah, you should make that cartoon. Just asking all these weird hypotheticals.
Because every once in a while, one of them would be like, well, what about, when the president interned Japanese people? And they'd be like, back to the hypothetical scenarios.
YFT says, Tim, the students and professors are calling for intifada. They keep saying from the river to the sea, and they are being led by groups that directly support Hamas. Crowder covered this in detail this week. I agree. I think they have to be arrested. Here's a question for you. You've said, we tolerate all the speech, but Hamas is a terrorist organization, and they're out there banging pots and pans saying they directly support Hamas. In fact, there was one video I saw of a woman saying they're trying to raise money for Hamas, and then she quickly goes, for Gaza. So some guy was like, Hamas, you like Hamas? And then she said something like, yeah, and he was like, I forgot exactly what it was. It was a man on the street interview, and then she was like, we're trying to raise money for them, for Palestine. So it's like if you're raising money for a terrorist organization, you go to jail for that, right?
Could the
I would
president,
assume
if he
so.
wanted, could he raise money if he wanted for a terrorist organization? Would that
President.
be allowed?
The president, we won't say who, but
If
you
the
know which
president
one.
wanted to.
And then they've asked questions about things that Biden have done.
Yeah, because
the
he gave all those weapons to the Taliban. So
If a president, say, sniffed a young girl,
child. Can you,
But it's like if it
is he immune?
No. It would be Biden. It would be. It would cut to
Disguise.
like. It would be cut to like a black and white, just a black silhouette. You know what I mean? Behind the camera.
It's like, so like if I went to sniff it and I got out of the shower to try to grab my dog and I fell, man.
No, it's got to cut to
Trippy.
Biden, and he's like, it's like a van outside, and he's in it, and he's a microphone, and then he goes, "What if I like sniffed a child?" And then it zooms right into like Kagan with an earpiece, and she goes, "What if I like sniffed a child?"
Hypothetically, what is the oldest age you should be showering with your daughter? I'm just gonna.
You got to put the
I would
Krassensteins in that one.
The thing is, I feel like for Biden, there's two courses of action. You could bounce back and forth between like really actually horrible things he's done, but then like questions a child would ask, because that's who Joe Biden. Like,
What could he have? Fruit snacks for breakfast. We're going to be allowed to
Be a
do
beach
that.
for that?
What about 2 scoops of ice cream? Ice cream for dinner. Man. Is that allowed?
And it's like Kagan, and she's just saying these things, and then he goes,
Yeah, I'll have the black and white milkshake.
and then she just goes, and I will have a black and white milkshake. And they're like, Justice Kagan, I'm sorry. Yeah. All right, we'll grab some more. And then we got to make the corrupt criminal. No. We got to do the rock opera.
100%.
We have to do the rock opera.
100%. Guys, subscribe to Freedom Tunes if you want to see this cartoon.
All right, here we go. Legama says, proud American Jew here. I always opposed woke because it was immoral to demonize whites. I realize it's ironic how only now the mindless normies finally get it, with woke Hitler youth shrieking about Juden. Normies now get that it's a Maoist moment. Let's make lemonade. Yep. All right, here we go. We'll grab maybe one more super chat. Let's see what we got. So we'll scroll down. All right. Cain Abel says, after Trump is out of office, the deep state will just undo what Trump did. There should be no consensus. The deep state needs to be removed. That means that the night is not yet as dark as it could become. And should it get darker, people will greatly regret it. Right now, you can sit in your living room, order a pizza, play Fallout 76 with your friends. The games apparently are flying off the shelves. Figuratively, because they don't have shelves anymore and they're all just being downloaded digitally, but you get my point. After the show came out, it's like 5 million like some ridiculous amount of downloads for all the games. Look, man, I got to be honest. We have a golden opportunity with this country, but I fear that it's about to be lost. I mean, for how many years we were able to sit around and play video games and watch movies and enjoy ourselves and have your family and we had things that previous generations never had. I worry now it's not possible anymore. That you're either going to live in the pod and eat the bugs, or you're going to be waving a Trump flag, and both sides are not going to tolerate the other. But you know what? We've got a big story for the members only show. I talked about it a bit at 6, but we'll go over it now. A guy in Baltimore used AI to create a hate crime hoax. He used the principal of a school's voice to make him say racist things. So it hath begun, and we'll talk about that. But first, smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, share the show with your friends. Head over to timcast.com, click join us. We need your support if you want to keep the show on the air, because members are how we sustain everything. And you'll get access to the uncensored show coming up in a couple minutes. I think it's better to call it the call-in show, because it's not so much that it's uncensored. We swear more, but we kind of talk about the same things, but then we take calls. So it's your opportunity to submit calls. But typically, you like if you're in the Discord server chatting, as a member throughout the show, you can be submitting questions, and then we choose 4 or 5. So 5 people to call in and talk to us. So definitely do that. Follow the show at Timcast on X. I know it's just my X profile right now, but it's important. And rumble.com/Timcast IRL, and subscribe to this channel. And again, timcast.com, become a member. The Lectern guy. Do you want to shout anything out?
Follow me on X. It's Lectern Leader. It's the only social thing that I'm on. I'm off of Facebook, Instagram, because I will not give a penny to the commies. And yeah, have a good time. Come make jokes with me.
Right on.
Seamus Coughlin, if you guys want to go over to Freedom Tunes, we released a video today that I thought was pretty funny. I think you guys will really enjoy it if you go and check it out. I think we may or may not be working on the cartoon that we just described. I'm going to chat with my team as soon as I'm off air, and we're going to see what we're able to do in the next couple days here. So please subscribe, hit the bell notification over at Freedom Tunes. And if you enjoyed watching us riff like that, well, I got news for you. At freedomtunes.com, if you become a member, you are going to be able to watch a podcast that I make with my team where we discuss videos we made, and you get a look behind the scenes. We also have a bunch, dozens, I think approaching 100 at this point, cartoons that only members are able to see. So go over to freedomtunes.com, become a member. Thank you so much. God bless you.
I'm Hannah Claire Brimlow. I'm a writer for SCNR, that's Scanner News. It's scnr.com. If you want to follow our work, you definitely should follow at Timcast News on Twitter and Instagram. It's the best place to find everything from all of our writers. If you want to follow me personally, I'm on Instagram at hannahclaire.b. I'm on Twitter, HC Brimlow. Guys, thank you so much for everything. Bye, Serge.
See you guys. Thanks for coming, Adam.
So,
Cheers.
real quick, there's a story that I'm seeing going around. We're going to talk about this one in the members only show because we're about to jump to it. But in Ohio, a black man was being arrested. They kneeled on him, and he said, "I can't breathe," and he died. And so this story is from today, and there's a video of it happening as the man says, "I can't breathe." Considering the protests that are already happening, so become a member at timcast.com. We're going to talk about this one, and maybe it will matter, maybe it won't. But it's sad when anybody loses their life. But we'll see you over at timcast.com in a couple minutes.